Township solicitor.
And he's trying to get on right now, sir.
Right. So while Mark Thompson's getting on, obviously we still have a lot of material to go through. We've had 2 meetings. Appreciate everybody's input and interest so far, and hopefully we'll have another productive meeting. And Chuck is just joining as well.
And Mr. Thompson.
David.
Hello, sorry about that.
Thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Doctor, good evening.
I believe our first agenda item was for you to review, and I am totally blanking. All I want to say is the Affordable Care Act, but I think it's similar in terms of
I think that would be in your purview more than myself.
fair housing, is it?
It was the
So
special.
I have a list, yeah.
It was a special use district, the TND, and venturing into the fair share analysis.
Right.
And maybe Janine wants to start off with the phone call she remembers having with Mr. Thompson and possibly Joan a while back about that.
Well, yeah, why don't we start with a fair share analysis? If That's okay. I'm in my car, so I'm just not putting the video on. You don't stare at the ceiling of my car. But yes, we did have some conversations with the county and some township officials, I'm going to say at the beginning of the process, concerning what is referred to as a fair share analysis. That is essentially, just to review that, there was a Supreme Court case called Zurich. Okay, it was about 20 years ago. And what Zurich held was that every municipality, it was necessary for municipalities to provide for what's called their fair share of different types of housing. Mostly when we talk about, the housing that's in question, it would be high density housing. So essentially a township wasn't able to, unless it met certain circumstances, zone its entire, within its borders for agriculture and, let's say, 4-acre minimum zoning, single family residential. It was necessary for municipalities, townships, boroughs don't really have a problem. Obviously, it's mostly townships, to provide for a certain amount of high density and medium density housing, along with other types of uses like agriculture that are more land intensive. And what Zurich did was it set forth a test for fair share. And it's a 3-part test. And the first part of the test was this township a logical area for population growth? And I guess another way to term it would be, is it in the path of growth? So you first had to meet that test. And most of Chester County, I would say, likely meets that test. Given the proximity to Wilmington, high density regions in Delaware, Philadelphia, most, if not all, of Chester County. And please, if you disagree, please let me know, Ms. Spears. I don't want to step on your toes, but that's the first part of the test. And I think Franklin Township would likely meet that part of the test. And the second would be, is the area developed or a developing community? So if it's fully developed, like I lived in West Goshen Township, and it's fair to say that most, if not all, of West Goshen Township, given its proximity, has seen development, has been developed. So pretty much most, if not all, of the areas of the township have experienced development, infill development, and there's quite a bit of high density housing. So that would be a developed community. Franklin Township would probably be on the other side of the equation. I would say it would be developing, but it's certainly not a developed community. And the third part of the test would be, that's basically the meat of the test would be, what is the amount of land available for multifamily development? And is that area of land, what is the proportion of that land compared to other areas that could potentially be developed? So that's what the township, it's not a simple thing to quantify. And the reason for the consideration of fair share analysis kind of ties into the issues related to the TND. There was an area adjacent to the village 15 years ago that was slated for some fairly high density development. And specifically the areas to the north, to the east and the north of the village, which are now preserved as agricultural land, were proposed to be developed with a very high density traditional neighborhood development, along with several shopping centers and other mixed use type developments. And because those areas essentially, let me just, if I could just step back, there was an area that there were quite a few developments before the Great Recession that were proposed in Franklin Township. And really it was sewage and issues pertaining to sewage that caused several developers to band together to come up with a plan to develop several parcels in the township. Most, if not all of those parcels have been preserved as open space. So all of that high density development that was part of what the township was looking at 15 years ago, for various reasons, economic reasons mostly, are no longer viable. So the township has had discussions over the years about, well, now that we've had these areas set aside for high density development, they're no longer can be developed with high density development. Do we need to reconsider whether or not we would be meeting what's termed to be the fair share analysis? And that would be to quantify the areas that are developed with high density development and may be developed with high density development in the future, and compare that with the other zoning districts in the township to determine essentially what, what the percentages of that. And then we can look to determine whether or not, the township's fair share might be met. Usually that's done with a planner, but the county is the planning partner of the township. So I don't know if the county wants to chime in. I'm going to give an opportunity.
Yeah, could I step in for 1 second? I just want to interrupt you.
Do.
So I just want to add two things, well, three things actually. One is there was a fair share analysis done. I think it was finished in 2019 by planners. Two is that analysis did find that the township was in the path of growth, but that was before the 2020 census figures came out. And so the Comprehensive Plan Task Force looked at not only the 2020 census figures, but actually in this comprehensive plan process, looked at the number of building permits that have happened basically over the last 10 plus years. And through that process, started to wonder if the conclusion was that Franklin actually was not in the path of growth, because there's been so little growth that's happened over a relatively long period of time. So that was the first thing I wanted to bring up. The second thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't know, Mr. Thompson, if you remember this discussion that I had with you, and I don't remember who the other township officials were, but there were other ones that were part of this, that with the fair share analysis, is is the allotment required allotment under the test, as you said, which is a relatively it's not an easy, it's not a straightforward analysis. When is the allotment enough, basically? And at the time, we had talked about how the one ag parcel is zone T and D, but the question was, is the township under obligation to keep changing the zoning every time a parcel that is designated for multifamily, those sorts of uses, is developed or preserved? And in that case, is it a moving target that the township has to keep basically moving around on? Or is it saying, look, the township did zone X, Y, and Z parcels for multifamily. It just so happened something else happened with those parcels. So I don't know if you recall, we had that discussion at the time. We started to have the discussion about, is the township still on the path of growth? But I think we talked early enough that the numbers weren't out yet for the census. And also we hadn't done the building permit analysis in full. But we definitely talked about how do you deal with the moving target? And is it a moving target, or is it the township has provided this and the township can't control market forces? The third thing we talked about is, for some reason in that fair share analysis, the SU district, the special use district, came up as sort of an add-on at the very end of the analysis, even though the SU, which is, basically industrial, commercial, kind of specialized uses, has nothing to do with fair share of multifamily housing types. For some reason, it came up at the back of that analysis saying it should be looked at and how to examine it for, is there enough commercial industrial zoning in the SU and the township? And at the last meeting, that conversation came up, which is in part why they wanted to invite you to this meeting, to talk to them about whether there is a similar test for districts like SU as there is for multifamily housing. And I said to them, in my experience, although I am not an attorney, just to be clear, and I am not a solicitor, in my experience, there is no test like there is for multifamily, and the MPC would rule, meaning you have to allow for all types of uses, but it doesn't necessarily say how many commercial industrial uses. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to go over the conversation that we had, just so everybody, is on the same page. So thank you.
That was really good, Silver.
Right, and the two concepts, they're a little bit like apples and oranges. I mean, the concepts under Zurich and the percentage are a percentage basis of that type of use. So contrast that with issues that we can discuss concerning the special use district, which would be another concept in the MPC called exclusionary zoning, which is a body of case law that says the township needs to zone for every type of use. You cannot exclude a certain type of use, industrial uses, commercial uses, all types of uses, billboards. Those are the types of cases that have come up, agricultural cases and billboards. Special use, the reason why special use was kind of singled out is the special use district is in Franklin Township the catch-all district that allows for, it's basically the heavy industry, all of the types of uses that the township would like to see in an intensive area. That would be special use. I have that right here, just looking at it. But special use is a smaller district. And this came up when the township was analyzing issues related to the Gourmet's mushrooms proposal on the Benmark property. Gourmet's was looking for a place to essentially allow for a commercial composting operation. The township subsequently did allow that type of use in that special use district, but their argument at the time was that while the township allows it, it was essentially de facto excluded because the district was so small that essentially you would not be able to allow for the uses that we say are permitted. And that's called de jure, meaning that the uses are permitted in the district, but from a practical standpoint, none of those uses could essentially be done. Now that was challenged before the zoning hearing board, and that was never adjudicated. It was withdrawn based on some negotiations with the township under an acre challenge. But just for instance, the uses in special use would be like manufacturing, commercial uses that would be in excess of 40,000 square feet, public utility uses, and the last use that we did amend the zoning district was to allow for commercial compost, fertilizer, and mulch operations. So while it's similar to fair share, the concept of exclusionary zoning, they're different in that there's not a percentage of industrial uses or a percentage of billboard uses that the township must allow. Essentially, the township has to allow those types of uses. Now, coincidentally, my colleagues and I for another township that we represent, Charlestown, are currently argued a case before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. That was in April. And that case concerned a billboard whereby the township had zoned for billboard uses at a time along the turnpike where a billboard would have been permitted. And over a course of 20 years, the turnpike put in a slip ramp on Route 29 in Chester County. And because of the regulations related to the turnpike, the billboard use on the property was essentially excluded because there were certain setbacks. And what we argued was what matters is when the township zoned for that billboard use, it was something that could have been permitted. And, subsequent intervening factual circumstances, not the township zoning ordinance, created, a circumstance where it wasn't permitted anymore. And that's akin to cases which we've seen where it used to be developers would say, well, the township doesn't permit trailer parks, mobile home parks, as there's a term of art with that. And developers would say, well, we want to put a trailer park there because you don't permit them. And we went through an analysis that went up to the Commonwealth Court about 10 years ago, whereby we had to analyze what the township did permit at a certain time. There were parcels that were permitted to have trailer parks, and they were developed with townhouse communities because that was something that I think people found more lucrative than developing trailer parks. And that wasn't the township's fault. The township had permitted it. So the court in that case went back in time and said, township, you did permit them. And just because someone else decided to do something different, you shouldn't be penalized for that. So I know I've said a lot, but as far as the fair share analysis goes, that's different than that was an exclusionary zoning concept. The issue of looking back in time to what the township permitted at a certain point in time. Looking at fair share, I think you would probably need to look at the current status of the township, current high density housing, and what's permitted relative to all the housing types in the township today. So, Janine, I don't know if you're in agreement with that.
Yeah, we were looking at the 2000, I think it was finished in 2019, Jeff, or one of the plan, Chuck, I think that's right. We were looking at that fair share analysis for this plan. I mean, that's over 2 years ago now, and it's not that long in the past, but time does move on. So I don't think the zoning or that many developments have happened in the township, though, that would change the results of that analysis. The factor that I mentioned, the building permit data and the census data could be significant factors potentially changing, the whole path of growth point of that analysis. But, I can't make that determination. That would be a further discussion. But yeah, otherwise, I think you've done a good job explaining the difference between fair share of providing multifamily housing in the court case versus this concept of exclusionary zoning, and can you really build, have you permitted commercial and industrial uses, first of all, a variety of them, and then have you permitted them in a place where they can be built? The nebulous question in all cases, whether it's multifamily or this commercial industrial, of course, and Mark went over that very nicely, is, when is it enough? When have you provided enough? And that's just it's not clear. You can only do your best to show that I think the key has been, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, that the key is to show you've done an analysis and that you've put thought into it, and factors that change, over time, that of course impacts what happens with the decisions the township makes. But the township, if a township, not just Franklin, a township puts thought and analysis into it, then that is worth, something in the bigger picture.
Oh, no, I agree with that 100%. I mean, given the facts that Franklin has, the areas that were zoned for TND that have now been taken offline, I don't think the township can, and it hasn't, kind of just bury its head in the sand and say, well, we're not, we zoned for TND at some point in time. We know that land's no longer going to be developed. I mean, it's agricultural land that's been preserved as agricultural land. Do we still have areas that are high density and could be developed with high density? I mean, another serious consideration for Franklin is sewage planning. Obviously, you're not going to see many large apartment buildings in Franklin Township, given the fact that public sewage is not readily available.
Mark, for clarification, T&D and high density housing aren't necessarily one and the same. So fair share analysis is for high density housing. Fair share analysis doesn't require us to have shopping centers and related things that were in the T&D, correct?
Say that again, Mark.
Sorry, it's Dave.
Dave,
the fair share analysis, from what I understood when you were introducing it, is based on housing. And so if the township has high density residential, that can answer what the needs of high density residential. Yeah, I'm asking, do we need to have a TND in the township?
Yes, no. The answer would be that isn't necessary. No.
Right. Okay.
To push that one step.
Go ahead.
Well, Dave, to push that one step further, I don't know that TND actually endorses multifamily, does it? I thought it was just smaller properties.
It can. It depends on how the TND is written.
Yeah, I don't know that ours was written
Okay.
that way.
Well, it's generally more high density than not. The TNDs and a couple of our townships have those, are a mix of single family, multi-family,
Mixed use.
townhomes, mixed use,
Yeah.
Traditional with, alleyways, garages in the back. I mean, the real essence of a TND allows for a township to control the aesthetics of that. And that's something that's unique to TNDs. There's something called the Manual of Written Graphic Guidelines that's in the back of the zoning ordinance that is a companion to the TND, which is Article 9. And that has a whole, if you go through that, you'll see it's got illustrations of what dwellings should look like, all aspects of the development, from the light posts to, the gables of the roofs. And it goes along with something that, people want to approximate as kind of your traditional town development, and developers like that, and people like those types of communities. So I think that it's more akin to something that's on a higher density side. Certainly if you had a TND that was going to be developed, I would say that, that would change the analysis for whether or not, you might have a fair share issue. So yeah, I know we're kind of jumping around. TND was one of the issues. Jeff had listed fair share analysis, special use district, and TNDs as the three subjects. So
Right.
we've talked about fair share, and I don't know if we want to talk further about that. It certainly is something that we should consider.
Mark, is there any way you could talk about the whole kind of moving target conversation that you and I had with others before, of how a township can kind of feel comfortable determining that they have done what they need to do? I mean, nobody can help things being challenged. Things do get challenged. That just happens. But that's one of the conversations we had a little bit last meeting, which was earlier this month, of when is what is that bright line where the township can feel comfortable that they've addressed both multifamily housing, their fair share, and then also the extent they need to address various types of commercial industrial uses and the size of the area, whether it's one zoning district or multiple, whatever, the size of the area.
I think we can look to the SERC test, and just to kind of go through that real quickly. Obviously, you said we're in the path of growth, right? And then we look to, is the township developed or not? And we look to the areas that are developed and the areas that, are subject to further development. And we can compare what has been, the level of higher density housing that the township has, and then compare what is left as far as what can be developed, and kind of look at a where you are now and where you could potentially go, to determine whether or not there's anything, what if you've got enough high density now and you don't need to have any more developed, then you can say, well, we don't necessarily need to be concerned about future high density housing and providing for that. But if we're not so certain, that I'm not certain if there's significant high density development in Franklin Township. It's just not the type of township that you think of high density when we talk about. And then we would have to look at what's permitted in the future. So I think it's more of like a two-part test. As far as percentages go, I wish it was a bright line test. Let's say 25% of future needs have to be met, but I just don't see that in any of the cases. And I think that if we can look at the analysis to determine, these types of percentages, then I think that's what's important, right? We have a planner do an analysis, the county, and then we can all feel comfortable that if it does come up, then we understand the parameters, and we understand what the township's analysis and position would be concerning fair share. I mean, we obviously want to be able to demonstrate that we think that we're providing our fair share, and we've got plenty of high density that may be permitted in the future.
So what I would ask you, everybody keep in mind why we're having this conversation is not so much to determine tonight whether we need to move forward with this analysis, but addressing that chapter of the comprehensive plan and determining whether those action items, the wording, what we want in that wording, in that chapter when we revisit it at the end of the meeting tonight. So keeping that in mind, are there questions for Mr. Thompson? Either to fair housing analysis or to whether zoning and our special use needs to be addressed when we get to that part of the chapter again.
So I would just like one clarification. If a piece of property is preserved, and there is a zone set there, let's say it's the only place where it's zoned, let's call it a large piece of property. And somebody comes into the township wanting to do that use, but yet it's been zoned. How are we at danger? Well, we're always at danger, but is it a significant danger that we would simply lose in court that we weren't providing that zone because it was preserved?
So I think, and again, it's not that the township needs to provide for every type of, every type of housing unit, so to speak. It's housing in general.
I mean, in general,
look,
any use,
yeah,
any use at all.
Okay, well, let's just look at the TND use, right? So the TND currently is in a location that has been completely preserved, right? Under the township, the county's ag program, that use is it's basically precluded, right? So we're not going to see a TND in that area unless all those people that are making agricultural uses decide they want to sell their property and break all the, all the county's covenants, and that's a very low percentage. So I always think about what would I say to a judge if someone made those arguments, and I look at that situation and say, well, I think the township might want to consider whether or not, if you wanted to have a TND truly in the township, given the factual scenario that you're facing at this, right now, is there another place where you might want to see it put? Now, I think you're talking about the exclusionary zoning concept, which is more tied in with special use, right? So when we look at all the uses in the township, like, for instance, billboards, we see billboards a lot. And usually those are in situations where there's high traffic roads, which you don't necessarily have high traffic roads, like 202 or the Turnpike in Franklin Township. But we would have to permit somewhere in the township billboards, and the billboards could be limited in size and scope, and there could be restrictions associated with them, and that would be subject to, a potential exclusionary zoning challenge for, de facto, well, you really don't permit billboards. That's where that special use district, that was the catch-all district for all of the, high intensity industrial types of uses, where someone can say, I want to use it for, and I'm just looking at the potential uses in the district. I want to use it for that Scott's compost operation, let's say. The high intensity, let's see, it says contractor establishments, commercial uses in excess of 40,000 square feet, so large buildings, manufacturing and processing operations. Someone could say, well, you say it's permitted in special use and you really don't permit it there. So I want to do it somewhere where it may not be congruent with, the surrounding land uses. And that is essentially the risk. And that's a little different because the way the special use district, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but if you look around and we can figure out where, these more higher intensity uses are permitted, I think the comp plan, the planning commission probably should look at, well, is this area significant enough that someone could potentially use, these properties? And is this the place where we'd like to see these types of uses? So I'd like to say that everyone's free from a potential, challenge to zoning, but I've been doing this for 20 years and things come up that no one thought about,
Are there, did you satisfied, Chuck? Are there other questions for Mr. Thompson?
Dave, I have a question, but I want to wait till the PC gets your question first.
I think you can go ahead, Donna.
Okay, great. So this has been really helpful, Mark, though it is very hard to follow. So let me just see if I can just paraphrase what I think I heard you say. And I actually thought this was good. So from a special use perspective, there's not a certain percentage of land that has to be special use. The key is about making sure we have all the uses available somewhere in the district. I think I heard you say that a couple of times. That's correct.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
The second one has to do with TND. And I'm trying to get my head around this. So we have an area zone, we have zoning that is TND, right? But we all know that it's not going to be used for TND because it's preserved. Would that be considered misleading? Or do you have, I just think back to the do we have to go back and change the zoning because of that? Or would a judge look at this and say, that what you're doing is wrong because you're saying something permitted and you know it's not going to happen, or you could just leave it the way it is. So that's kind of where I think.
Yeah, I think it would tie into, and I think as I understand the question, it would tie into more into the fair share analysis, right? So I don't think we could look at a fair share analysis and say, yeah, well, we have a TND, and that's high density, and someone could develop that with a TND. And if you peel back the onion, if I had to explain it to the proverbial judge, I think it would be easy for someone to say, well, you know better than that. These are all agricultural easements now. And, if you're going to hang your hat on the concept of utilizing this area for high density, then, you should know better than that, Township.
I know that we did do, and Janine, I agree with you again, we did it in 2019, that fair share analysis, and we did it without the TND. So I know we did that. If I'm hearing you correctly, Mark, that's the key thing, that we did the fair share analysis. We did include the TND, and based on the information we had at that time, the numbers that the planner came up with is that we were fine from the fair share perspective. So as long as that's true, what I'm hearing you, we don't need to have to go back and change zoning for the TND. We can still keep that area in zone. Is that correct?
So wait, the area that was TND was included in the analysis? I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Donna.
Sorry. So when we worked with the planner in 2019 and we did the fair share analysis, the TND area was not included.
Yes, that's what I understand. Right. So that's off the picture. Yeah, that's kind of out of the picture, so to speak, as part of the fair share.
So because we did it that way, we don't need to go back and change the zoning on the TND. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that it's worth an analysis as to whether or not you would like to keep a TND on areas that are essentially being utilized as agriculture, because there may be a circumstance where you're creating a nonconformities that someone could take advantage of, the expansion of nonconforming uses. But I don't think so, because TND is an overlay. So there's an underlying zoning district there, and it may be agriculture. I think it is. TNDs are inherently overlay districts. So I think you can keep it on there if you want. It's just whether or not, the township, with an understanding that it probably wouldn't be developed with a TND, doesn't make sense to keep it as a TND, or to align more with what it's being used for today. I mean, that TND was specifically put there because there was a development proposal 20 years ago, for 500, 600 units and a couple 100,000 square feet of shopping center space that fell through because of the Great Recession. I mean, that wasn't something the township wanted to put there. That was something that was kind of part of a larger development. That was part of a very complicated lawsuits that the township had been involved in for years. So it was somewhat foisted on the township as a way to deal with that litigation. It wasn't as if the township sat down, I think, and said, well, this is really what we want. So I think it's legitimate to look at that and say, do we want to keep a TND here? Does it make sense?
Okay.
Mark, I just had one thing, please. I know I'm being optimistic, but can you talk briefly, remind us about the 45-day clock and when the planning commission makes a motion to send this to the board, what should we make sure we include in that motion?
So the dismount for the planning commission is to make a recommendation that the plan be sent to the board of supervisors. And that's essentially the planning commission saying we are endorsing the plan, we're recommending it. You make a motion to make that recommendation. Then the township staff will send that comprehensive plan out to the school districts, the adjacent municipalities, county, for a 45-day comment period. And then at the conclusion of the 45-day comment period, the board of supervisors can take those comments into account, make whatever changes they feel are necessary based on those comments, and schedule a public hearing to approve the comprehensive plan. So once the planning commission's done, that motion is made, and then it moves to the board of supervisors, but we can't do that, until this 45-day comment period is satisfied. Does that answer your question, Jeff?
Yes, sir. Are you okay, Dr. Hoffman?
That answers the first part, or question one, but the contract, I guess, is the other end of the time frame that we have to finish by a certain contract date.
Yes, and what did you say, Janine, September 20th?
It's the end of September. And Mr. Thompson, a question for you. So the 45-day clock obviously is the official MPC process, but the supervisors at the prior May meeting had said, would it be okay if, I think, I'm going to pick up my calendar for a second. There's a supervisors meeting mid-June. I don't remember the exact date, mid-June at some point. And so they were wondering if the clock doesn't start then, and I was able to get the draft plan to them, if it was still an okay thing for them to start, reviewing it then. They just wanted to make sure at the last meeting we had the conversation that they weren't doing anything, out of sorts to, I guess, start reviewing it early. And in theory, because these meetings have been joint Board of Supervisor Planning Commission meetings, in theory, supervisors have already been, weighing into the conversation. But I think, and Donna, I think that was something you had talked about too. I just want to make sure I'm conveying this concept right. They just want to make sure that they're, following the MPC, but maximizing the amount of time also, for input.
Yeah, no, I don't see any problem with that. I mean, that is simply a 45-day comment period, much like sending a zoning ordinance to the planning commission. You have to give at least 30 days for the planning commission to provide a response. We can do that as soon as the planning commission in Franklin Township is done with this comp plan draft. Then we send it out to the adjacent municipalities and wait 45 days, but there's nothing that says the township board cannot sit and review the document. Now, I would, if there are changes, we'll have to look and see if they're substantial or what, but I don't want to, assume that there'll be any changes, but there's nothing that says the Board of Supervisors can't review and discuss that plan at one of their public meetings. So yeah, they can jump ahead on that task.
So the meetings in June are June 6th and then June 15th.
So the June 15th one, depending on how much we review tonight, and we were hoping to get through the vast majority of it tonight, if not all of it tonight, then there's a potential that the plan could be at that June 15th Board of Supervisors meeting. Because I would still need a little bit of time. I've started to make changes, but I would still need, time to make any changes that were happening tonight, obviously, before getting it, to the township. And then the decision would have to be made tonight. Let's just say we get through all the material tonight. Let's just say we do. And the Planning Commission votes to officially send it on to the Board of Supervisors. Then the question, Mr. Thompson also was, does that 45-day clock start, let's just say June 15th, when the Board of Supervisors have that first meeting, or does it start, tonight when the Planning Commission votes to forward it on, or when is the hard line for that clock starting? And obviously, somebody has to give the plan to the adjacent municipalities, which I think in this case would probably include Cecil County, Maryland as well. I know it's not Pennsylvania, but I'm not sure about how you want to deal with that. And then also the school district, and then, the county. I know that was 3 questions or so in one, but I think
I think the 3 questions come down to, when does the clock start, Mark? Is
Exactly.
it tonight or June 6th is what I'm going to suggest. It's either tonight or June 6th. Is that when the clock starts
I
when we're
think it's
finished with
when
it?
if you were to vote tonight to recommend the plan, I would suggest Jeff and the township then make, a plan to provide the notice to the adjacent municipalities in the school district tomorrow. And assuming that can happen, but I think to be on the safe side, I would say whenever that happens, whenever those notices go out to the municipalities, I would say that's when the clock starts. Now, I'm hoping that we're not cutting, 45 days is quite a bit of time. And I would hope that the dates don't fall on the 45th day or something along those lines where we have to make those decisions. But that would be what I would say.
And we're also up against, as I think Jeff mentioned, or maybe Dave mentioned, we're up against the end of the grant
Summer.
contract, which is the end of September. So we're trying to fit it all into that time frame as well.
Right, so you've got a little bit of time, but the summer will be over, right, before we know
Yes,
it.
it will be. It will be. Time flies.
You look like you have a question, Dr. Hoffman.
My understanding is, from what Mark said, as long as there's not substantial changes, the supervisors can be reviewing as they go along. And so what I heard was we still have to have a fairly complete, comprehensive plan. So Janine would still need to work on it for us to disseminate it to the surrounding municipalities. So it wouldn't get disseminated tomorrow because there's still things that need to be cleaned up. So the clock would pretty much start, Mark, when we have a good enough plan that we're sharing it with the surrounding municipalities. Is that correct?
Right. If that's the limiting factor, then I'd say yes.
Okay.
If it took a couple days for the final plan to be, all the changes to be made, and it took a couple days, then I would say once that's available, then we let, the municipalities know that it's available. That's when it starts.
Janine,
Yes.
Realistically, how long do you think it would take you to do the changes?
Realistically, definitely 2 weeks. As I said last time, there's a person in the office that does the mapping, and I can't speak for them. I did talk to him because initially I thought this was going to be in June. So I did talk to him, and I'm waiting for him to get back to me on his exact, time frame, because he's now rearranging his schedule, and I think he can do it. But He has to figure out for certain. But for me, I've already started to make some of the changes,
So,
which you'll see if we open up some of the chapters, you'll see that there's some wording changes in the chapters already based on the errata sheet. So for me, I don't think it would take me any more than maybe a week, but I feel safe saying 2 weeks total from the time that the planning commission votes to send it on. I just want to allow some wiggle room there.
right, okay. And I think, we got to get through the rest of the plan
Right.
tonight, or at least get through it one time. And then we'll have I think, a better idea of whether it's week, 2 weeks, 6 months, just kidding. So any other questions for Mr. Thompson? All right, great. I appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
All right, look at that. We already got the screen up.
Have the screen up, ready to go. So
I
I'm going to go based on the agenda online. I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah, so the agenda online was for us, I think the first was the appendices. The next item after Mark, or,
The review of the last map, actually.
okay,
Yeah, I think it's the last map. So I have that here. And this is the map that will actually go in the beginning of the plan. And it's called the regional settings map. And I'm going to scroll down and you can see it has a lot of different features on it. Franklin Township is obviously here, but it does show portions of Cecil County and portions of Newcastle County. And it's basically just to give a bird's eye view of where the hospitals are and the airports and the recreational areas, et cetera. And the cool thing is it does show, these major recreational areas right around Franklin that we've talked about numerous times. So does anybody have any comments about this map? It was part of the map packet.
I think we can move on.
Okay, so then the next item we were going to do, notice I have a lot up here, all these documents. The next item we're going to move on to is Appendix A, which is the community input summary. And this does go through a summary of the survey results, a summary of those stakeholder interviews that we did, a summary of the community workshop we did in September, I think that was September 2020, and then a summary of the public meeting that was done in, I think it was done in January 2021. We did add, there was a comment at some point, I think it was during the task force meetings, we had already added for the review draft. You saw how many respondents there were, and then what the township population was. So the question is, does anybody have, I'm not going to run through all 16 pages, if that's okay. Does anybody have any comments about the survey results? It's literally one question after another question in the survey, and then listing in the summary, because the entire survey results is on the township website and has been on the township website since not long after the survey was done. So if somebody wants to go through, and see all of every single question, we basically did the top answers. We did the bottom, least popular, and then we did a sampling of some of the other responses. And then if there were, for example, in this case, there were 9 similar responses about housing. So we just listed if there were multiple responses and went through that question after question after question.
So Janine, in the text of the document itself, you had gone back and put the actual numbers along with the percentages. I know right here it's not as critical because you have the total number and someone could figure it out themselves. But would you consider putting the numbers there, or is that too much work?
I mean, we can. It's a lot of work. That 2-week time frame I gave you guys would be getting tighter and tighter. But we can do it if that's something the township really wants.
Honestly, I think if somebody should be reading this in that much detail, their first paragraph, you might want to put a percentage of the 4,433, what 515 is in that first paragraph, to give a percentage of respondents of the total population.
Right.
I'm just tossing it out. I appreciate the question, Donna. I'm not in favor of telling Janine and her staff to go back and put numbers next to all these percentages.
No, I like, so like I said, you can figure it out yourself because it's all there, but I like your suggestion. Just take what the 515 out of 4433 is and just make that your next sentence. So I think that's fine.
Any other thoughts on numbers and putting the numbers in or not, guys?
It is 11.61%.
Already done.
Well, Janine's typing that. Any comments on the survey or
So here you could see the
workshop survey?
results. Just to scroll down to show you how it's formatted. Community workshop summary, went through the major comments. Subject area interviews. We did 8 of them, I think, so went through the subject. And we actually did a analysis of where the responses were similar to the survey, where the responses were different from the survey, in case anybody, wanted to know what the differences were. And went through all of that business. And then the community meeting I referenced, and what the input was from the community meeting. Does anybody have any comments about this, or can I move on to the next appendice?
Oh, let's move on.
Okay, so the next appendice was the brief township history. The Historical Commission did draft this. And so they drafted the wording, and I just used this wording, a couple paragraphs. It is very brief. And then
So Janine,
a couple maps. Yes.
I would like to suggest one small change.
Mhm.
It's no
Okay.
longer, when the original township history that this was derived from was written, it was typical to say Lenni Lenape,
Mhm.
but Lenape alone should probably be the correct term now. So I would tend to delete Lenni. And I would suggest we do that.
I would accept that since you wrote it, didn't you, Paul?
I wrote it adapting. The current township history is actually adapted and corrected from the township history in the last comprehensive plan. And so since this was written, I've been doing a lot more reading and paying attention to terminology.
Okay, so we will change that. And then there's also 2 maps here. One is the 1777 era map that Chester County Archives did to show what the properties and the road network was in that era. And then the next is the Whiteside maps from the early 1800s. And then there is there's a very nice, probably the first relatively detailed map of the county was produced in 1856 and had the roads and then the village names. And so there's that map also. And if that's all okay, then we'll look at Appendix C, which is the demographic tables. So when the task force saw this way early on in the process, the 2020 census hadn't been out, and I think it's fair to say the task force did not like how the tables were done. So I actually worked with the demographer in the office, and he went through table by table and updated, I believe, every single table based on the 2020 census, and then also in between census years, because the census is only once every 10 years. Obviously, the further you go away from the census, the less accurate the data is. So the US Census Bureau does mini censuses, which are basically a random sample covering from 1 year to 5 years. And those results, being a sampling, obviously would never be the same level of accuracy as the census, but the best we can do in between years, as well as there's certain types of information in those random sampling. It's called the American Community Survey, that actually is no longer gathered when the census is done. So in some cases, it's the best information that we can get. So the demographer from my office went back and looked at all these tables, and basically we looked at all the tables, filled in information that needed to be changed, and then did new write-ups of all the information. So this is just an overview. This provides the background of what in the world we're doing in this appendices. Then we looked at the population. Obviously, we now have the 2020 census population in there, and we didn't when this was first done. Then we looked at population forecasts, and now we can start with Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which is the multi-county planning agency for the Philadelphia region and parts of New Jersey. They do population forecasts, and we use their forecasting. And their forecasting obviously now uses the 2020 census, which they're forecasting, which numbers we didn't have when we first looked at this. So these are the population forecasts for Franklin. And in 2030, the forecast is growing to 4,800 people. Given the few building permits and the little land, relatively speaking, that is left to develop in Franklin, that may not happen. So again, it is more of a regional, look at it. So to kind of fine tune the data a little bit more, at the comp plan task force meetings, it was asked if we could take a look at the township building permits, and the township did provide this data. And so the township building permit data is in here. And this is what I was talking about when we were talking about that fair share analysis when Mark Thompson was on, about the number of permits issued. And the number of permits issued can kind of give you a sense of what the population growth has been. And you can look basically since 2009, each year there's been very few permits issued. So relatively speaking, not much, population growth. The average per year of permits was, only 9 permits per year. So we did an analysis here to talk about how many houses were realistically, may have been built. And some of the permits, obviously, sometimes somebody will apply for a permit in 1 year, not build the house, and then reapply for a permit 5 years later, and maybe build the house then, or maybe not build the house then. So that would have to be, taken into account here as well. But it does show, and it's kind of an interesting analysis because you look at 95 to 2006, and you can clearly see the number of permits being issued was definitely higher. And then, you hit 2007 and you start to see things changing. And then once you get to 2008, short of 2014, there's a relatively consistent low amounts of permits being issued, requested and issued. So we added that analysis. I spent extra time on that because we talked about it a lot at comp plan task force meetings. So I wanted you all to see that it was done.
Janine,
Yes.
that's only for a new house. That's not for a new residential unit, correct? So if somebody puts on in-law suite, that would not show up, correct?
My understanding was the information I was given from the township was for a new house,
Gotcha.
not for an addition or, that's
Yeah, because that probably is not going to affect population, but
Right.
yeah. Okay, just
I mean, you're
wanted
right.
clarity.
These could affect
Yeah.
population by a little bit, but
Small. Yep.
pretty small. Pretty small. The age, this is interesting for you to see. Remember how I said that some of this data is the American Community Survey. So this is an example where these population characteristics are now being captured in this in-between census, the 1 to 5 year census, and not so much in the regular decennial census. So just to point that out. And then moving on to race and ethnicity, education, and again, new numbers, income levels. Then there was a section on employment and looking at employment by industry that people are employed in, and then also looking at employment by occupation, where people are employed, looking at the prime working age in the township, doing a housing analysis of occupied units and the types of units. The vast majority of units are single-family detached units, as you're seeing, over 90%. And then the age of housing was an interesting analysis. And you can see the vast majority, if we're looking at single categories, between 1980 and 1999, most of the housing was built, but overall, most of the housing happened between 1960 and 2009. And you can see here from 2010 on, relatively few units have been constructed compared to what you were seeing prior. And then also housing value of owner occupied units. To be clear, this housing value is reported by the owners. So this is not looking at real estate, realtors or assessment data. This is being reported to the census by the owners of the properties. And then also occupied units, how many are rental units, and then what's the status, occupied, vacant, owner occupied, rental occupied units. And in Franklin, owner occupied is the vast majority of housing, according to this data. So does anybody have any questions about the demographic data, any changes that you made, anything that you need to have clarified or?
So at the beginning of this whole section, you have COVID-19 spelled without a hyphen, and it should be COVID-19.
Okay.
And that occurs more than once.
Okay, does anybody have any other comments other than like a typo situation? And if not, I will move on to the last appendice, which is a pretty easy one. And it is a set of acronyms. We've talked about how there's a bunch of acronyms in this plan. Often the name is used the first time and then we use an acronym in the rest of the chapter just to try to keep things moving faster in terms of reading and making chapters a little shorter. So we did include a list of possible acronyms you might see in the plan, just to be helpful. And if nobody has comments on that, then I am going to move on to chapter 2 and that implementation matrix. So let's see, chapter 2, the implementation matrix. Now, in the chapters, we have in some cases changed some of the wording of these actions a little bit. I don't think it's been very dramatic. So I can also open up the chapters and go back to the errata if it makes it, more clear as we're talking about each of these chapters, just to clarify if we changed anything in the chapters that would change anything. So in chapter 3, I'm looking at add statement, add concept, delete bullet, and delete bullet here. So I'm going to go back and look at page 6 and page 7 and these two. I don't think that changes the action. I think it was one of the when the arrow bullets underneath the action item. So it looks like when we're reviewing chapter 3, there's nothing here that the wording wouldn't be changed enough that we can't look at the action item in terms of by whom the action will be done and when the action should be done is what I'm seeing from here. Because everything else, these are all sub bits of information. They're not the action themselves. So I think we're okay there. To remind you what we're doing in this table that we hadn't gone through is we have the main recommendation listed. Then we have the actions on how to implement the recommendation. That's what these sub numbers are. We list the main how-to, and for the most part, I don't expect us to be changing that in this discussion because the main how-to is so 30,000 foot level that shouldn't be, I don't think that's going to be an issue. What we do need to talk about is during the comp plan process, the comp plan task force added in the primary entity that would be starting this action, and then maybe partners that would be helping with the action. This table is not meant to list every single person, every single partner. It's really who is primarily going to be responsible for initiating this, and then who will be one or two of the main partners implementing this action. And then also we have a time frame and a priority and time frame are mixed together in what these mean. And I'm going to run up here so you can all see what these are. Again, to refresh your memory, we talked about this a little bit a couple meetings ago, but that when column, which mixes and matches the priority and the time frame, we have an A, which is act on, which that means this should be started within 2 years of the plan adoption. C, consider acting on, which means it would be initiated within 3 to 5 years of plan adoption. E, explore, which means the strategy action would be further explored to see if it should be something that's considered, and funding and time would influence if it actually happens or not. And then O is an action that's simply ongoing that the township does on a regular basis. But it's important to note in the comp plan because it's important enough to rise to the point where it should be acknowledged as it's ongoing on a regular basis. And then the abbreviations, we have the PC, Historical Commission, Historic Architectural Review Board, PennDOT Ag Industry, non-agricultural businesses, Chester County Agricultural Development Council, the Township Manager, this new pro board, the Township Parks Recreation Open Space Board, the Township Engineer, Solicitor, Homeowners Associations, Land Trust, and then Chester County Parks and Preservation Department. So when you see these abbreviations, you'll know that that's what they're referring to. So let's just start with the Ag chapter.
Can I just get a point of clarification from Dave, how you want to handle this? Because I do have comments here, but I know in past meetings, we've done a process where we look at a certain grouping, we have the PC make their comments, and then you open it up to others. Would you consider doing that here? Like maybe look at all the threes and then look at all the fours? Is that okay?
I'll let Dave comment on that. I think it sounds appropriate to maybe just do one chapter at a time. I think it's going to get too confusing if we go through the whole table.
Who do we have? We have Jim and Donna as far as supervisors,
So it's here too.
and Dawn. I really feel we can have planning commission and supervisors make comments together as we're going through this.
Okay.
But do a chapter. I agree, Janine, a chapter at a time.
Okay, so we will start with agriculture. The general recommendation was support ag. Then we had our first action item. Remember, action items are different steps you're going to take to implement that major recommendation. So the first one was consider ordinance measures to further support agriculture. We thought the planning commission could be the primary partner, and then the ag industry could be a main secondary partner, and then when would be within 2 years of the time frame, the comp plan start. Generally speaking, any kind of ordinance, specifically zoning or subdivision ordinance, generally speaking, not entirely, but generally speaking, the task force put those as A, meaning they would start within 2 years of comp plan adoption. So ag is not necessarily singled out as being the only, ordinance change that would happen within that period of time. I'm not saying all of them would happen within that period of time, but the task force tried to group some of these recommendations, just logic and I guess logically for how the township would implement some of the recommendations to make the most amount of time and money sense. So with that being said, PC, ag community, meaning ag businesses basically, and then the time frame within 2 years start. Does that seem logical?
I would make the comment that probably is not going to be initiated by the PC. That would be initiated by the supervisors because we 95% of the time serve at their pleasure. I don't know if you want to reconsider that thought process.
Well, what we did do, and just to thank you for the reminder to say this, what we did do is we did not put supervisors in this table because the thought of the comp plan task force, the supervisors were going to be involved in every single one of these. So listing supervisors under every single recommendation seemed redundant, and it was going to make the table much, much longer. And we do say it would be involved in every plan action. So, why are we listing them over and over again?
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for reminding me to say that. So the next one is determine roadway changes needed to help agriculture equipment. The manager will be the primary entity initiating this with the help of the engineer and the ag community. And it was felt that this was ongoing as roadway changes were coming up. Coordinate with Chester County Ag Development Council on how to keep ag economically viable. It was felt this was ongoing because this is something a long-term and short-term goal of the township. It was felt that the manager would initiate this. Obviously, a partner would be the Ag Development Council in Chester County and the ag community. Coordinate with the agriculture industry to develop a coordinated agritourism effort with Kimballsville Village as the community center. It was felt the manager would initiate this and the ag community to be the main partner.
Yeah, this is the one that it just seems like a lot you would be asking of Jeff and Melissa. I know what you're saying, that it's for them to initiate it, but this really seems like it's a group effort. I don't know if you can do an asterisk or something, consider creating a separate group that deals with this, but this is a pretty major effort to work with the Kimbersville Village as a community center. It's not something you kind of do with your day job. Jeff, I don't know if you have a comment, but that would I was fine with everybody else, but this group, that was the one that concerned me. Like we're asking a lot.
Personally, I agree with you, Donna.
I agree too.
The two that would do it.
So here's what we have written under it, just so you guys can see. If you want to form another group, then I think one of these bullet points, if there should be an addition to a bullet point, or a new bullet point saying, I don't know, consider forming a township committee. I'm just making this up right now. Consider forming a township committee that would lead this effort or something like that. I think that would be logical. And then in the table, where it says who would be leading this, whatever, manager, ag community, then we would add an abbreviation, for that new township committee. instead of just having it appear there for the first time. I think we need a description here of what that means. Does that sound like something we should be adding? This would be page 5.
Does anybody think it fits into any current committees or commissions? I really don't think so. In the
I don't
same
think
sense,
so.
I don't think we're 4,000 residents. How many committees and commissions do we need? But
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way.
Can't that just fall with the board to make that decision?
Whether it's a committee or not, you mean, Jeff?
Whether it's a committee or not, and how we go forward with it. Not that we automatically have to create it, but I would leave it to the decision of the board.
We could add, I'm not going to put this in the chapter, but I'm just writing it here. We could say something like the BS may decide to create a new committee for the purposes of carrying out this action. We could put something like that. And then not so much add it to the implementation table, just do something like that. I'll put it in the errata here. Actually, I can really just leave it sit there.
I mean, I think it's fair that we put it in the chapter. I guess Jeff and Melissa have to have confidence in the Board of Supervisors that they won't leave it only on them to implement this all. And that they would form a committee in order to get this action item accomplished.
Fair statement, because what if they decide not to? And it's on the township staff.
What do you
I
think?
concur
Tom?
with that. Like, I feel,
I mean, we could take out the manager and just leave it for the board. That would be the one place that we do put Board of Supervisors. Then we'll definitely get a committee.
Yep, I like that idea better, Dr. Hoffman.
The only reason
I
I
agree.
feel about that is because it's kind of changing how we do the whole table. I don't want it to give the impression that the board's not involved in other stuff. So you all would have to be comfortable with just changing how we do the table in that one instance. And if you want to do that, that's fine. I just want to make sure everybody knows it would be, something different.
I like Dr. Hoffman's suggestion now.
May I make just I have a pretty decent vocabulary, and I have never seen the word charrette before. Is there any other word that can be put in there? Because every single person that reads that in my vision,
charrette is the wagon that they used to pick up the designs from in the Middle Ages.
I mean, that's a really
rolled scrolls.
That is a pretty obscure word.
And I came up with a definition, the origin. How's that?
Yeah, charrette's a big planning word. So that's why it was used.
Okay, just wow.
Before we even do that, I want to make sure that everybody likes what I've written here, because I'm going to put it now in the errata sheet. Add bullet under 3-1.4.
I kind of agree. Charrette is a pretty specialized word.
Bullet 2.
And you're going to take Dr. Hoffman's suggestion, Janine?
Not do that yet. I'm going to finish putting this wording in the errata sheet to make sure we get the wording you guys want.
Paul, does it make sense to possibly make this part of, I mean, it's not technically part of HARB, but.
It's not what HARB does at all.
No, but HARB is very Campbellsville centric.
Yes, but it's like totally changing what HARB does. But something I was thinking, it's a horrible Since the supervisors are involved in everything, could it simply be to be determined, TBD, instead of manager?
Could be. Is everybody okay with this wording? And then I'm going to go back to the table. I just want to make sure people are okay with this right now.
I'm good.
Okay. I will go back to the table now. Okay, so this is the word. This is the situation in question. So I mean, we could put manager if you want to slash, and I'm just making this up right now, so bear with me. It wouldn't say this obviously, but it could be something like new committee. I don't know why it does this. I mean, it could be something like that. You all tell me.
Why don't we do the either Board of Supervisors or BOS / to be determined?
Planning Commission? What do you want to do also?
What about manager / to be determined?
I'm just putting it in the plan so you can see what it looks like.
Or, I mean,
Yeah. If the assumption is the Board of Supervisors are already included, and just put TBD.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah. I mean, currently, I know you guys wouldn't load this all on Jeff, but I think it's better for a 10-year plan that it just says TBD.
Thank you.
We could put Jeff / TBD.
I think whoever's going to do this has got to be pretty excited about doing it in order for it to be successful. So
Right.
there's going to need to be some sort of a committee, or at least one person that leads the charge.
3-1.4. Okay. And then the second thing was the word charrette. And I'm going to put under page 4.
I mean, it's purely a style thing. I'm just like, I have a pretty comprehensive vocabulary, and that is a very unusual word. I'm going to have to try to find a way to incorporate into something in my professional life, just so I can make people look it up.
Okay, I'm going to just use word other than charrettes and change in chapter 3 also.
We still just leave it in a footnote. I just love the fact that it would make somebody look it up. But no, sorry, I don't want to drag it on anymore. Moving on.
Okay, moving on. So support agricultural land preservation is the main recommendation. So, oh, I'm sorry, considering having an annual charrette, I'm sorry, I skipped this entirely. Manager, ag community, and explore. Is this the right parties?
I think that would be the TBD.
Okay, so I'm going to say under 3-4, I'm just going to put this in one note, and So support ag land preservation. Continue to coordinate with property owners, land trusts, et cetera, on ag conservation. The pro board was going to take the lead. This is land trusts, and this is Chester County Parks and Preservation Department, and this will be ongoing.
Were you okay with 3-2.2, Donna?
It's a good one. I didn't write that on my list. Let me just look again. I had it on.
Just checking. You may be all right with it. I wanted to ask.
Yeah, you know how it's coordination. Yeah, I think I'm okay there. Thank you. Yeah, I think I see the pro is the start, and I know we talk about that later. That they're that initial point, and they bring it together. I guess I don't know how much hair splitting we need to do, but I think it's to have the clarity that the pro begins that interaction. Once the board agrees that yes, we want to do this, then it should become a partnership with the pro, the board, and whoever we're working with. I think I'm okay. I think we just need to be clear about that in the text of the document. I thought we were. But thanks, Jeff.
Okay, and then the lead on that would be the manager, because we're including in the duties of. There wouldn't really be a second because it's making sure the duties are changed. Then considering how to leverage funding sources, the pro would be considering that, and it would be ongoing. Hold a farming forum for input. The pro would take the lead on that. The manager would assist in terms of township coordination, and this would be exploring it. And explore efforts to encourage other landowners to enter their lands into the ag security program. The pro would take the lead on talking to landowners. Obviously, the ag community would be part of all this, and this would be an ongoing effort to supplement your current ag security area. Are there any questions, comments, concerns about any of these, or can I move on to 3.3? We'll move on to 3.3. So this is protecting prime ag soils. Consider zoning changes. To do this, the Planning Commission would take the lead. This is again as I talked about, zoning changes would generally be. Partner with the Chester County Conservation District, as well as land trusts and educational information. The pro board would take the lead on this in partnership with the Chester County Conservation District and then land trusts. And this would be exploring, encourage farmers to have up-to-date information about nutrient management. The pro board would be kind of the liaison outreach for the township. Obviously, the ag community would be a partner, and this would be an ongoing activity. Consider whether areas of township lands effectively could be farmed with seasonal crops. The pro board would take a look at this, working with the ag community, and this would be exploring. Encourage organic farming. The pro board would take a look at this with the ag community, and this would be exploring. Moving on to the next recommendation, and the last one for this chapter, development pattern. Look at the zoning to make sure there's minimizing conflicts between ag and other types of land uses. The PC would look at this, and the Township Comp Plan Task Force decided to make this an exploratory sort of thing. And then subdivision measures for development design that feeds and is compatible with the agricultural industrial base, and the Comp Plan Task Force decided this would be an exploratory sort of situation. Before we move on to Chapter 4, which is resource protection as green infrastructure, does anybody have any questions or concerns about this? And if not, we'll move on to Chapter 4. And again, let's look at Chapter 4 in the errata sheet to make sure there were no changes. This is what we're going to talk about later for the last bit of community input. Change weight, leveraging, fix typo, Consider the creation of land trust. These are all in bullet points. This is a bullet point, and this is a bullet point. So there's nothing to any of the actions themselves here that we would be changing that would influence this particular, this particular section. So under this, the first recommendation is protecting surface and groundwater. So the actions would be examining the township code, the water portion of it, and resource protection zoning standards. And the PC would do this. And it was thought, since surface and groundwater is important to the township, it was thought that that would be done as an A action. Encourage private land stewardship actions. The pro board would take the lead on this in working with land trusts. And it was thought this would be an A action and then become ongoing after it was initiated. And then restoration demonstration projects and township properties. And the pro board would take the lead on this with land trusts. And it was thought that this would be an intermediate 3 to 5 year start for this action. Protecting other natural resources. Information on websites. It was thought the manager would take the lead on this with assistance from the pro board. It would be initiated fairly soon, and then it would become ongoing. Promoting public-private partnerships and the importance of personal responsibility and individual properties. The pro board would take a lead on that educational initiative and then reach out to HOAs to work with development communities on this. And then it was thought this was an intermediate priority. And examine resource protection and zoning. The PC would look at this and look at this with a shorter time frame after comp plan adoption. Open space preservation included the duties in the pro board to monitor, etc. This mimics what was said on the ag land preservation. It does the same thing, but for open space preservation. Duties of the pro board would be changed. So the manager would take the initiative on that pretty much immediately after the comp plan within a short time, and then it'll be ongoing. And then to coordinate with property owners, except basically coordinate on open space reservation. The pro board would be your liaison, and they would be coordinating with the land trust and Chester County Parks and Open Space. And this would happen within a short period of time of the comp plan and then become ongoing.
We switched, I just wanted to bring people back. So that what I want to make sure in 4-3.1 is that we do say first point of contact, and you do have that in that space. So I thought you've addressed my concerns that the pro, talks to people, makes things happen, but then it gets turned over to the board once there's an active opportunity. And I think you captured that, at least in my mind, you captured it.
Right, and we remember we changed. I think we added wording like that in the bullet points underneath this action. How to leverage additional funding. So the pro board would investigate that, working with the land trust, and this would just be an ongoing activity. Developing prioritization for available tracts that could be preserved. The pro board would take a look at that, along with land trusts for technical expertise, and this would be something that we've done pretty soon after the comp plan was adopted, and then addressing stewardship and maintenance projects. And it was thought that the PC would do this along with the pro board, and this would be ongoing. Does anybody have any comments on this one before I move on to the next recommendation and action set?
I don't understand how that falls under the PC. Address land stewardship and maintenance and open space projects.
I think it was thought that because in zoning, and particularly in the open space design development, there are specific regulations about how you maintain open space, that in open space projects, whether they are land development sort of open space or other types of open space that's being preserved, because the PC is most familiar out of any entity in the township with those requirements in zoning and subdivision and how open space is supposed to be maintained. I think the the comp plan task force was feeling that the PC's, just familiar with those regulations and could weigh in on open space projects the best as the expert.
Any other thoughts? If nobody else sees a concern, that's fine with me.
Would that be something that the zoning officer would get involved with?
Probably, I mean, if it were an enforcement issue or reviewing an application, yes. But this is more for when the idea of this is when an open space project is occurring, because it says in open space projects. When an open space project is occurring or being proposed,
Okay,
somebody would look at land stewardship and somebody would look at maintenance to talk about how the land was going to be, maintained in a long-term situation as opposed to an enforcement or, a permit application.
So as
so
something
it's
comes
not for
through,
current open spaces.
it's as somebody develops, I believe is the, so as somebody develops, we do concern ourselves with the maintenance and stewardship of the open space.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
ongoing. We've been doing it already.
You've been doing it already and the regulations are already there. So historic and scenic resources, considered ways that heritage interpretation can be incorporated. And the Historical Commission with help from the HARB would be looking at this. And this would be a relatively soon action and then become ongoing. Promote the Historical Commission as just a resource in the township for residents, property owners, and the manager would do this, and it would be ongoing. Consider applying to become a certified local government, which is a state program that has some funding available for historic resource related projects. The manager would have to be involved in this, obviously, because it's applying for a program. And then with the help of the Historical Commission and the HARB, and that was considered a medium-term project. Continue to maintain the updated Historic Resource Atlas and also undertake the next level of surveying. The Historical Commission with help of the HARB would do this, and this was exploring doing this and protect resources from intrusions and zoning. The Planning Commission with help from the Historical Commission's HARB would do this, and this would be an explore timeframe, so a longer into the future timeframe. And then moving on to chapter 5. And let's look here to see if there were any.
If we could look at 5-1.2, because I know we had the conversation about the official map, where Mark gave us some feedback on how very rarely it's used. And the one place that they did use it, they never put a property in it because the township, the residents were so upset. This is the PC's meeting, but when we get this in front of the board, I'm going to ask for that to get deleted. I'm not in support of an official map or any work to be done on an official map.
Okay, so we're on. I'm just trying to bring up the chapter so everybody else can see, Donna. We're not on 5.1.1. We're on 5.1.2 right now.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it's coming, right? 5-1.2. Third.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to bring it up so everybody can see what you're talking about.
It's a second action item.
So it's here, and then in the errata sheet from that meeting.
We were gonna have Mark Thompson review it with us, and he did.
And he did.
And so we haven't had discussion on it. I think at this point we have to have discussion because it comes up in the action items for the matrix.
Yeah, I think it's the only one, because this is just changing wording, pro board. So this is the only one that I think is actually going to change an action item. This is additional. These other ones are changing wording or providing additional wording. So, but they're not actually changing, the essence of the action itself. So we will now talk about this one on the errata sheet.
We know your viewpoint, Donna. Thank you. So we'll get the commissioners and alternates viewpoint on an official map.
was a lot more involved than I perceived as it was being presented to the comp committee. I don't think anyone understood the ramifications of it. Or at least I didn't.
Yeah, I had concerns. And then given the fact that Mark Thompson said the only time that he came across it, there was a lot of opposition within that municipality to the point that they didn't use the map.
Yeah, we have other municipalities that do have official maps and they do this sort of thing. And so when the trail planner was drafting these recommendations, that's how this ended up being included, because it is something that happens in other communities. So wanted to throw it out as another tool you had available to you. Whether you want to use it or not is another thing. But that's kind of how the origin of it came about, because other municipalities have used it for this type of kind of giving people a heads up.
Janine, can you go back to the matrix 3.12?
Sure.
Or 5.12. I toss this out. I would put an E if it stays there and that it's not a C if we wanted to keep it in there, but.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If you're going to do that, I would suggest that rather than say develop, change this to consider developing. That places it upon the supervisors to make the final decision. And then E is perfectly fine in conjunction with that as well.
I agree with that too.
John?
That's
Mark?
reasonable. That's reasonable.
I'm
Consider.
fine with it.
To say add consider developing and change it to an E timeframe. Or even just consider an official map is fine, I think.
Or we could just say consider an official map. Forget about word developing. Developing sounds even more formal. I'm trying to mark this so I know what I've changed since I started making other changes. This way, at least I'll know if I've made the change or not on the errata. Okay, then I have to make the official. Chapter 5, this is page, okay. So we are going to, whoa, the cursor just disappeared. Change action to consider and remove develop.
So Dave, as you said, this is the PC's position, and that's totally appropriate. But when we get it in front of the board, I still don't want to get this out of there, but that's not what this meeting's about. So just want to let people know that.
Okay.
Okay, so let me save everything here. Okay, going back to the first one on here, updating the trail feasibility study. There was one done in 2009. That would take the initiation would be the pro board with the help from the PC. And that would be something that would be done as a A-level item. We talked about this one already. Work to obtain easements to implement the multi-use trail walkway network. That would be the pro board with the help of the PC, and that would be ongoing. Complete or coordinate with neighboring municipalities to link pedestrian circulation for better access. That would be the pro board and the PC along with the manager. The manager would be needed just to coordinate with the other municipalities. And that was considered an A-level item. And then developing outreach materials to let everybody know what's available in the township in terms of hiking, biking, cycling. That would be the pro board with help from the manager. And then that would be a mid-level C item. Are there any other changes that should be made to any of these in terms of parties responsible and timeframes? And if not, I will move on to the next recommendation to support the township's parks and trails, or I'm sorry, parks and preserves. Add wayfinding signage, pro board with help of the manager. Obviously, signage should have to be.
I'm sorry, I was slow. Can you go back right there? 5.1.5. Isn't that an O? I mean, aren't they already have materials, don't they?
I don't think there's many materials available now. We kept trying to search the website as the comp plan task force, particularly myself, and there really is very little materials. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's a C and an O.
Yeah, I think they have some materials.
There is some. It's just not. It's not all that clear.
Okay. I would give them a little bit of credit. I would give them an O.
That's good.
That's page 7. Okay, under support township preserves, wayfinding signage, pro with the help of manager, C. Additional opportunities for nature education interpretation, pro board, explore, promote volunteer opportunities and maintenance. Could be the manager at the pro board.
I mean, that's, Greg is all over this. I mean, I just would flip them. I would put the pro as the leader in this and the manager as a partner, but they do really well.
Agreed.
I would also put it as an O because I just got an email
Yeah,
that was promoting volunteer opportunities.
I agree. I think they've done, I mean, this has been going around for a while, but the pro has been amazing in terms of the work that they're doing, and I agree it should be an O.
Okay, so remove the A altogether, right, and make it O?
I think it's all going.
Yeah.
Janine, similarly, I think 5.2.1 is probably an O as well. The pro has been adding signage to find the parks itself, and they're talking, and that's been done. And they're talking about signage that would alert people to former mills locations in various locations in the parks and preserves. So I think in fairness, this is something they've already embarked on.
Okay. The pro board really wasn't up and running, I think, when we had done this, so. Okay, so I finished writing that note. So the wayfinding signage, you're saying this should be an O now or what?
Yes, I think realistically it's an O. They've started on this and they're continuing.
Is that cool with everybody else?
Yes.
Yep.
Hey folks, this is Zach. Sorry to do this. I actually have a hard stop here at 9. I'm not a voting member, so I'm not hopefully impacting anybody else, but I'm gonna have to drop in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
Thanks, Zach. Do you, at the risk of opening this up for everybody that has a hard stop, is there anything you wanted to comment that's going forward?
No, I mean, honestly, this has been well thought out. And I mean, the changes that I've seen in the last couple sessions have been mostly, there have been a few, substantive ones, but a lot of it's been cosmetic. And so I think the effort behind all this has been fantastic.
All right, well, thanks for your contribution. We'll see you in June.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay, so engage in regional coordination. Work with neighboring municipalities to complete a more interconnected regional network, trails, pedestrians. That would be the pro and the PC, working with the manager. And that would be an A consideration. And then identify projects to go to the TII, the Transportation Improvement Inventory, and that would have to be the manager conveying this to CCPC with help from the PC, and that would be ongoing. How does everybody feel about that? And if that's okay, let's move on to chapter 6. And again, I'm going to go look at chapter 6 quickly on our errata sheet and make sure that there were no major changes. Metrics writing email to consider yield, reduce salt. This may be the only one, but I don't think it's a major one. I think it's wording. Let me just look back at chapter 6, 613.
It's actually more in line with the bullet points with the consider wording.
Yeah, we changed this. Consider the use of renewables. So it was one of the bullet points. Thank you, Donna.
I do have a comment in this section. I thought there were several things in this block of 6.1 that were given to the pro that I don't think it belongs with the pro. I think the pro does what they do very well. But like, for example, 6.1.3, they're really not. I don't think they should be involved with energy efficiency, or if that's really the manager. And the same thing with 6.6-1.4. I think that's a manager issue as opposed to the pro. So we'll see what the PC has to say.
Okay. 611, just start here. Review Act 537 to its facilities planning. That would be the PC with the engineer, and that would be ongoing. Review any water service area to ensure they continue to meet the township's vision. Surface water quality, groundwater quality, etc. PC with the help of the pro board. That's ongoing. And then the two Donna mentioned, township's facility updates to see how energy efficiency can be used.
So just to say on 612, official map,
Here we go. Yeah.
but we're not, we changed to be considering an official map. So do we want this item to go away if we don't have an official map?
Let me just look and see. Review 612. Water. Nah, I think we can change that.
Yeah, I don't think you need an official map to do that.
No. We'll do a, I think we should do a water, usually the township would have a water service area map. That's how other townships do it. I think we'll just change it to do that instead. So page 7, let's see, page 7. And this is under 6-1.2. Change to water service area map. Okay, good. And then is the PC and the pro, from what Don is saying, I don't know that the pro is the right secondary.
Jeff, what are you thinking? I mean, I see the pro getting involved with groundwater and surface water quality from a Clark perspective. I don't know. I
mean, is it engineer?
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm thinking engineer.
Okay, I'm gonna say and change pro to engineer. Okay. To get to Donna's point here, township facility energy efficiency, and then this whole regional concept. Should we delete the pro and put the manager in here, or what do you all want to do?
I think it should be manager.
Yeah.
I think you're requiring that if the township wants to do some modifications to their facilities, that it's going to go before the PC. I don't know if that's, typically it would not.
Well, not so much go before, but maybe an assistant to the manager.
Wouldn't this also be an engineer, more practically speaking? Or
I just think I don't think anything goes in the second category.
okay.
Should we delete this then altogether? Just have nothing there?
Yeah, I think that's the reality.
Okay, how about this one, coordination of facilities? Does this get the PC deleted also?
Trying to understand it.
Can you explain it, Janine? As silly as that sounds.
Yeah, basically it's saying the vast majority of community facilities, whether it be library, police, fire, etc., are not going to be provided by Franklin because Franklin's such a rural community. You just don't have the population base or the funding sources to do it. So most of your services are going to be provided on a regional level. And so therefore, it's very important for the township to continue coordinating on a regional level for these services to be provided.
So that's going, currently is happening
Right.
with the hospital.
And the library and the police.
So that never gets to the PC.
No, it'd be manager and supervisors. And
Or just blank. And then,
so blank.
yeah, our overall list.
What happened there? Okay, then the next section, green infrastructure and energy, continually assess how to support and encourage the use of alternate energy.
Yeah, I'll be pushing back again. I don't think this is the pro. I think the PC has, you PC have to let me know, but I had you down for 6-2.1. Maybe you would with that in terms of ordinances, but I could be wrong.
I'm not sure why this says signage either. I'm not sure if that might be a typo. Let me just go back and look at this. 6.2.1. I think somehow or another, the Sustainability Advisory Committee somehow or another ended up with a typo of signage. I don't know how that happened, but I think that happened. I apologize. So this was explore the creation of the Sustainability Advisory Committee to kind of take this role on. So I think that should have been in here. Probably typing quickly and Word was like, that looks like the word signage.
Couldn't we task them to also do the ag coordination in Campbellsville?
But it also says consider
Yeah.
forming. It's not a committee that we're saying to form.
No, but they're not going to object to us pushing this onto them. So
Right. But but if we're considering to form them, then it's not ongoing.
no, would not be ongoing. But isn't that us? I mean, I've lost track. We're currently reviewing our green, right?
We still are.
Yeah. Yeah, I've lost track. So isn't that what that describes right there? Our green ordinance?
I would think so.
I
I
think
would
it's
think
definitely
so
us.
as well.
As a part of it, anyway, I mean, it's a big
Yeah.
part.
I think it's definitely us. That should say PC.
Janine, maybe instead of signage, you want ordinances, or maybe you don't, maybe you keep it blank. I don't know, but,
Yeah, it was supposed to say, as I said before, it was just a typo. I think when typing quickly, somehow sustainability ended up being signage, and then rest of this was not added.
The signage should be changed to ordinance.
yeah, I mean, I don't think you need a sustainability advisory committee right yet. Because I think the ordinance is a key part of it.
Okay, well, this involved more than just the ordinance. That was one part of it. If you look at all the other, we talked about, I think Chuck may even brought this up as a thing. I think Chuck, you brought this up in a meeting, one of the task force meetings for the comp plan, this whole Department of Energy Zero Energy Ready Homes program to investigate, to explore that.
Yes.
Look at,
But I don't, but I don't remember that we were talking about. So that would be just done at a review level.
Yeah. but that's still.
Manager, building code official, and then PC would get involved. That would be all that. There's no reason to form a committee for that.
Okay. Well, this committee that we had talked about throughout the process, or throughout the review of this chapter, it's in several places, as you can see. So if we're going to change that, we would need to go back to the errata and figure out where this committee is, and change it elsewhere in this chapter.
What does everybody else feel about it? I just don't see that committee ever getting formed.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, you
Behind the Kemblesville committee.
were talking about how maybe it could be part of the Kemblesville committee. I don't know.
No, I said it's less likely than the Kemblesville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that this is even farther off. And I don't even see anybody that's really gonna, maybe there's somebody that's real passionate about it, but.
Okay, well, I'm going to change this here. Okay, so I put this as PC, and we were going to look at, I think we were going to change this to ordinances. Spell that. Here. Let me make the change first. So we have ordinances, PC.
You can remove them.
Which,
I mean, of course they're involved, but, well, they're involved. So you can leave manager. You could either leave them in or take them out. They always assist us.
okay, well, if it's not going to be a primary, if it's going to be just sort of a thing that happens all the time, I don't know that we need to have it in there. And would this be an ongoing thing?
Yes.
Okay, so ongoing is okay. Okay, so that's the first thing. I'm going to make that change on the errata, and then we'll talk about this other business of the sustainability committee next. So let me just make this change quickly. What page is that? Page 8. What do we have here? Pro and manager. Okay, so then we'll talk about the sustainability committee business next. So. What is this?
Well, so does I don't know how everybody else feels about this. I guess at the end of the day, this is what the comprehensive plan committee felt was important. I don't know that as a PC member, I feel that strongly that I need it taken out.
Okay.
It's saying explore or examine. I think you have to have some of that in your comprehensive plan. Not everything in a comprehensive plan gets accomplished in 10 years. And some of that explores. I don't think it's wrong to leave it in if it's only to explore or examine the creation.
Okay, we'll just leave it in then, since it's an explore statement. Explore the use of greening roads, et cetera, educational outreach. The pro board was going to take the lead on this. Is this appropriate or not?
I don't think so. I don't think that's the thing. I definitely think the harp should somehow, Paul Agassi needs to be part of this. But I don't think
This was going to be that whole, I guess, sustainability committee. I think that's where the comp plan task force, if I'm remembering correctly, was headed for the 622. Yeah, they were going to have the sustainability committee because now you're looking at greening in the township of various stuff, historic buildings, development design, that's salt, not salting the roads as much that we talked about at the last meeting that we added here. Stormwater management infrastructure. So who in the township would take responsibility for sort of the whole?
It's all over the place. I think you could
all over the place.
I think you could put pro and harb. Put harb as the second in the second.
But why is it pro? I mean, I understand the pro is parks. I understand pro is open space. I don't understand where the pro fits in here in terms of I think of what their current charter is. I don't see what they have to do with it.
Because they're greening stormwater infrastructure.
I see you guys more involved in that than the pro. I don't.
Yeah.
I was going to say the PC, engineer, and manager.
Yeah.
I mean, pro could get involved, but it's not.
The lead, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this another case where perhaps it's better to say to be determined? I sometimes feel that the comprehensive planning task force was trying to find the appropriate actor for everything, and it may be in some cases that the appropriate actor is ambiguous or might need to be created, or the duties might be split up. And so perhaps it's not unreasonable to punt here. As I listen to everybody talk, it seems to be this is has a lot of possibilities, and trying to nail it down to one seems to me to be a difficult proposition.
I agree with Paul as long as it says to be determined in harb.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Actually, I would disagree with you there. I think that that's the historical commission, not the harb necessarily.
Okay.
So is this considered ongoing? I mean, are we actually doing this now, or is this something we're considering?
I would say it's ongoing.
Okay, and if it's ongoing, it's being done by the PC and the historical commission. Is that what we're saying? Because it can't be determined.
If it's ongoing, it can't be determined who's in charge of it.
Yeah.
Okay, provide outreach about types of green infrastructure.
Janine, I don't think we're done with number 6-2.2.
Oh,
Yeah, you can't be to be determined and say it's ongoing, because if it's ongoing, someone must be doing it. Right?
Somebody's doing it. We just don't know who.
exactly.
We should know who, right? We have all the people here, so some,
We'll
I
put
would
this,
say, it does say explore here.
yeah, we'll just add explore.
So then it is explore. Good. Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
So it's not ongoing. There we go.
Okay, provide outreach about types of green infrastructure. I don't know that that's the pro board based on what you guys are saying. This sounds like this is not the case.
I don't know. Is it a TPT? I don't know.
Jeff, are you doing this now?
I'd like to further understand what is meant by it, to be honest.
There's a description in under 623. So basic web links about different types of green infrastructure. Basically everything we talked about up here. Adaptive reuse, stormwater infrastructure, development design, greening of the roads. This would be the use of it, and this would be providing property owners and others information about it. So how do you reuse buildings, partnerships, encouraging property owners to use best management practices for stormwater management.
I think if the one's to be determined, then this one should be as well.
But don't you do this, Jeff? I mean, don't you guys do this to your ordinances and do this? I mean, I think about stormwater. We do have a whole.
Yeah, we do. That's true.
I mean, it can always get better, right? But I would argue that this is, people come into the office, you give them information.
Yep, let's leave it alone then.
So if it's you as manager, who do you work with? You work with the PC on this, with the
Well, stormwater would be the engineer.
probably work with the engineer. You probably work with the historical commission. If it's adaptive reuse.
Yep.
It looks like, I mean, you probably work with a bunch of entities. You work with the engineer, you would work with the historical commission for adaptive reuse. You might work with the PC depending on, the situation. If you're going to talk about solar panels or geothermal systems, I'm not sure if you would work with the PC or the engineer on that.
Engineer and PC then.
So we will put engineer.
I guess it's providing the outreach. The PC really doesn't provide outreach. No, I think
Okay.
I think that is the manager and the engineer.
You provide guidance, right?
Provide outreach. It would help provide the information. It would be a partner to help give the manager information. So the manager, how this table would work is the manager would basically the party responsible, but then be leaning on other people to say, well, where am I going to get information about X, Y, and Z?
That's fine. That's fine.
Put on the website or, wherever else, brochures.
Right, if somebody comes into the office, right, and you give them information about what they can do and what they can't do. PC provides the guidelines, right? Or the board does, I know.
If we go back to 622, actually, we just did this with the school when they're putting in their pervious paving parking that fits into that category. So that was engineer and then PC as support. The TPD could be left as O, and it could be engineer and then PC for 2.2.
So would explore be changed to encourage?
Yeah. Because we're already doing it.
So basically add this up here then is what you're saying.
No, instead of TBD, engineer should be the first one. Because it goes
Okay.
to the end. Yeah, it goes to the engineer. And he already has a good feel for what we want. So then we support him.
But on the adaptive reuse of historic buildings and all that, is that the case too?
Yeah, I think you could make that argument.
Maybe leave TBD and behind engineer, put engineer slash.
But
TBD.
we want to put O
Commission.
instead
Well,
of
with the
E.
engineer there, we can leave it O. Just a thought.
Okay.
And Chuck wants credit for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we did it.
Wait a minute, so I'm getting confused. So what I wrote here is okay then, engineer PCHC, right?
Except for get rid of the last part. It should be O.
Right, it should be O.
Yeah.
But have we done all of these things? Like we've done adaptive reuse. You talked about pervious coverage, but what about this other stuff?
Well, and is and or. So we've done some of it.
Okay, so we can take it back to O is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in the narrative, change explore to encourage.
No, it's not. Okay, so we're taking this back to O. And then you guys want to change this to encourage?
Yes.
Oops. That did not work out. Okay, I have to go back and change all this now. So change. So we have to change. Explore. Change pro to AD. And add. Okay, so we did all that. Good. Okay, and then aim for Franklin to be known as green energy destination for the county from the comprehensive plan task force. And of course, the pro is leading this, but that is not going to be correct now. Whoops. And that would help the manager. And I don't think this is ongoing either because you haven't done it yet. I think this would have to be explore now. And then who takes the initiative for this? I'm not really sure.
TBD.
Perfect. Okay, and then I'm going to change it here. Page 8. We have lots of changes on page 8. 6-2.4. So we are changing, what are we changing exactly here? Okay, we're changing pro to be decided and O to E, right? Okay, good. Let me just save all this. Just to make sure it does not disappear. Okay, so next we are moving on to vehicular circulation in chapter 6. Determine ways to make 896 and Appleton Road less desirable as a,
No offense to the pro, but I don't see that falling into their category.
no, I don't either. Is the PC the appropriate?
I think engineer maybe as well, not.
I think we were supposed to get into Google's and Apple's routing software and modify it. That was, I'm serious, that was the recommendation. I don't know any other way to do this, so I don't know.
I just don't know how we can do 6.3.1 as a realistic goal because they're owned by PennDOT. I mean, I love to challenge PennDOT, but I don't ever see that really occurring.
We determined when we reviewed this last time around, we just determined to leave it in as an aspirational thing. To talk to PennDOT when you guys get the opportunity. Because I was talking about how District 6 now takes into account comprehensive plans, and PennDOT didn't used to, but District 6 of PennDOT, which is our district in this region, Chester County, now does look at comp plan a policy when making decisions. So even if this isn't realistic, having it in there saying this is the township's desire could at least, put some items on the table for the township. That's what we talked about in brevity last time around. But if you want to make the determination to remove this, we can. Otherwise, we'll just determine, when it should be, what the priority should be and by whom. I'm bringing it up so you can see what the thought process was behind these bullet points.
Yeah.
Right, and I see the bullet points. It's, traffic calming, which we should do everything possible. But to make it a less desirable truck route kind of sounds like a NIMBY. Like, sorry, I have a township that has a major truck route going through it, but that's what I have.
Yeah, and if you put signs up on 896 that no trucks are allowed, then the trucks are just going to use other roads within the township, especially when they have a local delivery.
Okay, so what do you all want to do with this recommendation then, or this action item? Do you want to just,
My personal opinion is that 896 is the most equipped for truck traffic.
in the comp plan meetings, there was this whole discussion about how Newark, Delaware, somebody had said in the meeting and everybody liked it, Newark, Delaware apparently has been successful in calming traffic on 896. That's why this is included here, to figure out how they did it. I
think we need to look at calming traffic, but not making it a less desirable route. I guess if our calming efforts make it less desirable, that's different than setting out to make it not a truck route.
Okay, so it sounds like you all want to change the wording of the recommendation. So determine ways to make P896 and Appleton Road. Determine ways to calm traffic.
Yes.
Determine ways to calm traffic.
Lowering the speed limit might be one of those ways, right?
Maybe something like that instead.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, because basically you've got 41 and you've got whatever goes through Oxford, 10, I think it is. And then 896 is the only thing in between. What else is a truck going to be on? So I don't know how you.
People were talking about, I forget, maybe a route to the west. I don't know if you remember, Chuck. Remember people were talking about a route to the west. People were talking about 41 And was it 742 maybe? I forget to the west in the comp plan. Anyway, we'll change the recommendation to read like this. I don't think there's any bullet points under here that wouldn't support this recommendation. Because this is all talking about calming traffic. All these bullet points are.
Except for the algorithm.
Right. Well, it's looking at traffic patterns.
Yeah, it's 472.
Yeah, it's like 273 to 472.
It's 472. That okay. That's what people were talking about.
That's what goes through Oxford?
Yeah, 472 comes
Gotcha.
down from 273. And you could take 472 to Oxford Road to the township there.
Yeah, so I mean, if 896 it's a long distance between 41 and Oxford. Something else is, yeah, it's gonna, 896 has got to be the truck route.
Yep.
But you have another issue in that 8.1.3 says focus industrial and other commercial use further out from Kemmelsville along PA 896. So we almost have to keep that in there, right?
They seem a little, I see what you're saying, John.
I mean, I think calming is good. Because calming doesn't dissuade people from putting trucks on 896, but deterring it does, and it then conflicts with 8.1.3.
If we're not going to deter it anymore, we're just going to make it calming. I
Oh,
think.
no, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
I
So
agree
we're
with
just going to change the wording of this. What I was trying to say is, I don't think we need to mess around with these bullet points. I don't think they do anything that.
I think the first bullet point where it says include understanding of technology, traffic routing algorithms. So now it's not about signage, it's about changing when a trucker is in Newark and they ask, how do I get to Reading? All of a sudden they're going to be routing down Flint Hill Road.
But you're not going to get that.
Well, if we understand the technology and modify the technology, that's what would happen. That's the only purpose in doing that. You're not, by modifying the technology, you're not going to calm traffic. Right?
Do
Unless
you
I'm
have
missing something.
somebody in the township that can buy a majority share in those companies that have those algorithms?
I mean, are you talking about modifying or hacking? Because hacking lasts for a few hours, maybe.
Okay, so what do we want to do with this so we can keep moving on? Do you want to just get rid of all this?
I think you ought to get rid of it.
The PC wants to get rid of this bullet point altogether? Is that what we're saying?
No, you can leave,
No,
consider ways to calm traffic along 896 and delete everything else, is I believe what we're saying.
Yeah, that's fine.
yes.
Yep.
Right. So you're saying you want to get rid of this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put a period in after 896.
Okay, because we already said that here, determine ways to calm traffic.
I know that, yes.
So we can probably just delete all this. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not helping anything.
Yeah.
It's not explaining anything more.
I agree.
We're just repeating it over again.
Well, we're serious about it,
We're really serious about it if we're saying it twice.
But you want to get home tonight, right?
I would like to.
Yes. So let's cut it.
Okay. That's page 8.
You mean what you could do, and you can say no, it's just move the second bullet. So now that you got rid of the first bullet point, move the second bullet point up front first, because that's really what the key is, and then follow that with 454.
Yeah, but between here and Newark, Delaware, I'm not aware of any calming that's been done on 896. And I've traveled out a number of times. I mean, there are speed limit signs and there's strict enforcement, but that's about the only calming is I know it's very strict enforcement down there. And I sure as hell don't go with the speed limit when I'm going through the northern part of Newark.
It said that there was a concerted effort in planning and implementation effort in Newark, Delaware. The
Well,
com-
it may be on the southern side of 896, but not on the northern side.
I don't know. They said they just said Newark, Delaware. They didn't say which portion of it. So I don't know what that is. We just went with somebody saying it had been successful. So
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I don't
either.
know if it's successful, but there are traffic calming efforts in Newark, whether
Well-
they're north or south or west. They are there.
Between
Yeah.
where we are in Newark?
With what they've done is, gotten a lot of the truck traffic to go around town and,
Right. But it doesn't stop them from going through Kemblesville down to the Maryland, Delaware border.
I think what it's doing is asking them, reaching out and getting ideas that may work for us.
Right.
Okay.
And I do slow down at the big jerk guy that goes up in the air so I can smell the barbecue. So I think that's an effective traffic calming method.
If the wind is blowing in the right direction, it blows all the smoke across the road too, which is also calming.
Right.
okay, so then
What does the A mean, Janine?
that means within 2 years of the comp plan being adopted.
And I would say that's ongoing because PennDOT's
Right.
working on the Route 896 corridor study. And they're supposed to start construction by 2024. So they have plans in place and they've met with the townships and the residents.
So then it would be A and ongoing, I think, because it's happening immediately within the comp plan. Within 2 years of the comp plan being adopted, it's happening. So that's probably fair to say. And then what about this? Who's the lead on this for the township?
I don't mind being out front with that with the PC. It doesn't matter to me. I enjoy a challenge with PennDOT.
You're doing it, Jeff, but you're really the one who's been driving all this stuff.
Yep. I'm fine with that.
Perfect.
The PC second. Ooh,
Oh, wait. But I have to, for goodness sakes, now I have to go back here and change this business. I have no idea what page that was on. Page was that on? No, it's on page 8 on there too. Interesting. Okay, so we're removing bullet 1. And then let's go back up here. And then we are removing pro and change to manager, remove pro, PC. And change to manager, and then what else did we do? And then we added an O. Okay, so then coordinate roadway improvements with integrated strategies to enable farm equipment to travel. The manager working with the PC, and that was considered a priority item after the comp plan. Then coordinate with PennDOT and Chester County regarding maintenance of state-owned roadways and then county-owned bridges to ensure the maintenance repair happen. That's the manager, and coordinate with PennDOT. And I guess we need to add Chester County there. And that was ongoing. I'll make this change in a second in the errata. Let's see if there's anything else here. Provide identified transportation projects to CCPC. That was the manager and ongoing, and then discourage speeding and cut through traffic. And I guess that was the manager working with the state police, or the manager is the primary outreach. Are there any other changes that should be here that I should make on the errata? Other than 633 adding after PennDOT? Is this still page 8? Page 8. 33. And if not, moving on to on-road bicycling, there's just 2 here. Identify roadway improvements to facilitate on-road bicycling. The PC would take the initiative on that, and that'll be ongoing. And then consider how to address funding to implement on-road bicycling. And the manager, along with the PC, would explore that. Does that sound reasonable, or are there any changes there?
Fine.
The 6-4-.1, should that be PC and then secondarily manager?
I was thinking.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, 641. Okay, moving on to the next chapter. So Kimballsville, and let's see if we had any action changes in Kimballsville. No bullet points in Kimballsville, so we had we had basically no changes to that chapter. So I'll move back up here into the errata. Okay, so complete a village master plan with a focus on branding. And that will be led by the PC and helped by the Historical Commission and HARB. It's a medium range action. Participate in the regional Mason-Dixon corner arc interpretation plan that's already been funded. The manager would be the lead on this. It'll be a combination.
I was going to say, Janine, I think those need to be swapped. I don't know how anybody else feels, but Paul Agassi and Dawn and Paul Overton are on that committee. They're heading it up. I'm not. I'm happy to help them, but
I agree with that, Jeff.
Is that a separate committee?
the board had appointed those people at a meeting to be on that committee.
Yeah, so it's a different. What,
You
does
could
it
just
have a
call it,
name?
I don't know how Jim or Donna feels, but to me, I consider them the Mason-Dixon Committee or Commission.
Yeah, but I think it might be helpful to call out why they're all, like, it is historical commission, it is a member of the PC,
Yeah.
it is for the pro. So I actually think the way Janine has it in there now makes sense. I know it's a new group, but they're there because they're members of that group and they bring that expertise.
Yep, good point, Donna.
I agree. And there's other townships involved too. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I know that doesn't weigh here, but
PC is not in there, correct?
We didn't have somebody.
Yeah.
You should take us out,
Okay.
right? There's no one from the PC in there, is there?
Not sure, is there?
No one from the PC has been appointed. That's not to say at some point something might not happen. I think the PC is in there because the membership from the townships are drawn from among other bodies, potentially the PC.
And I think Dave's on it. He's PC also, right? in addition to supervisor?
He's an alternate. I don't know if that
We have,
counts.
sounds
or-
like we have two
Dawn has
alternates.
replaced Dave. So Dave was on it.
He's not. That's Dawn. Dawn has it.
Dawn's on it now.
Yeah, I took Dave's place.
Okay, so okay, so PC or no PC? You
Well,
decide.
You can put PC with manager.
That's a thought.
I- The reason I say take it out is because I know that Paul will report on it, but we don't typically get reports on the PC on things like this. So we would be kind of lost on it.
Yeah, I think that PC probably no longer belongs there. It was a possibility, but it doesn't, because it's become a more active situation rather than simply an exploratory one. It's not actively involved.
Right.
Okay, here we have the community charrette thing again for branding ideas around these themes. I know you guys don't like charrette, so I'll change the
I think you can keep it now. He's not here.
okay, good.
Just keep it.
We'll keep it now. Good.
Oh, Ginny, somebody's go to TBD, right? I just don't remember which one. Did we previous TBD?
Well, this is different. This is the branding for the other one was more of the branding or more of the getting I guess agricultural people together to talk amongst each other. This is a different, but we could change this to be decided also if that's easier. Is that what everybody
Yes.
wants? Okay.
Yeah, and it should be explored. I don't care if it's C or E, but
It should be E then if it's explore, because C defines it as in a time frame.
well, that's what I'm tossing it out to the other members.
Sorry about
Is it a priority to be in C or is it an explore?
I think it's an explore.
Explore.
I agree.
Okay, and then these folks as partners seems to make sense to me. I think all the different entities need to be involved.
That's good.
731. Seven, two, one. Oops, that's supposed to be a dash. So what do I have? I have manager to okay, participate in town tours and village walks. That would be the HC and Harb taking the lead along with the manager, and that's an explore. Work with local farmers to create a Kimblesville Village Farmers Market. The manager with the ag community to take the lead, and that would be explore. Establish wayfinding signage. Kimblesville, the manager would take the lead with the business community in Kimblesville, and that's an explore. Does anybody see any changes that should be made to those?
And 7.1.5, I hope, Jeff, that's ongoing.
Right, that's right. Dawn's doing this now.
So it would be E/O, is that what you're saying?
I hope it's not an E, I hope it's an O.
How about a C and an O?
Okay,
You'd have to do something to get it going and then, oops. Now I'm just making up letters.
I mean, ongoing, we have a farmer's market going?
We're trying to develop that now, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Develop it and then have it be ongoing once it's developed.
Yes.
I think is what they're saying.
Exactly.
Page 9. Enter. Mhm. So we changed it to C. Change from E to C. Okay, historic resources then. Develop the design guidelines for Kimballsville as a local historic district. That'll be the HARB and the Historical Commission and the Planning Commission, and that would be a medium priority. Prepare a national register nomination for Kimballsville, which is currently an eligible district. That would be the HARB, the HC, and that would be to explore it. And then continue to keep the village as a local historic district. And look at other options for adaptive reuse, protection of resources, historic resources, and their adaptive reuse. And the HARB would be looking at that along with the manager, and then that would be ongoing. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that? Walkability, traffic calming. Employ traffic calming techniques within the village. That would be the engineer working with the manager and PennDOT, exploring it. Address parking. That would be the manager working with the engineer, exploring. We need to change this one around. We'll get to that in a second. Let's just go to this one. Identify and implement improvements to help walking and biking. And we looked at that map last time around. That would be the engineer and the PC and the manager, and exploring. So we need to change this wording, and I'm just going to go up here and just look at how we change the other wording so we can sort of mimic it and not reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to copy this for a second. I'm just going to paste this in here just so we can see what we did. So here, basically, consider ways of making it in order to preserve the historical. So let me bring this up in the chapter 733. Oops. So in our prior meeting, we already changed and hedged it to say explore if possible. If it is possible to coordinate with PennDOT to potentially prohibited traffic, yada, yada, yada. Or limit traffic to local deliveries, introduce traffic calming measures. To divert traffic to encourage to utilize routes and not to run through Kimballsville. What do you all want to do with this recommendation after the conversation we just had? Do you want to just bag the whole get rid of the whole recommendation, or I'm sorry, it's not a recommendation, the whole action?
I think we have to be consistent with the previous statement and go to calming.
Yeah, because we already covered it effectively in the previous
Right.
statement, I think. So I don't know why we have to reintroduce it here if we've already done that.
I agree.
So what do you guys think? Just getting rid of it?
Yeah.
I think we addressed it both.
Let me put this in. Coordinate it. Okay. Okay, so that was 733. Let's go back in here. Oh, wait, what page was that on? 8. Okay, so now we're actually getting rid of this business. Actually getting rid of that. Oh boy, that was not what I wanted to do. Let me just put this here for a second. Page 8. Remove 7-3.3. And then we'll get rid of all that wording there because we don't need the new wording. And so then we're going to get rid of this business. Okay. So to finish off chapter 4, did I save that? Examine how to change the village zoning. Oh, where'd the errata sheet go?
Don't lose it.
I don't know where the errata sheet went. Hold on, maybe I closed the errata sheet by accident. I have too much stuff open here.
You know,
Too many documents open. It's getting confusing.
I'm surprised you're doing as well as you are.
Well, thank you. Does anybody see errata on the bottom? I don't see the word. Oh, right, maybe it's further over.
I think you may have closed it by accident.
Oh, here it is. It's open. It's just way over here.
Oh,
Yeah, close to the-
Okay, I'm not minimizing that again. That was a bad idea. Okay, so getting back to this. Examine how to change the V to promote compatible village-oriented uses. So we had the PC looking at that because it is zoning, helped by the HARB and the Historical Commission, and medium-term effort, C, examine the B district boundaries, determine whether the boundaries should include all of the National Register eligible historic district and the local historic district. That's the PC also, help with the HARB, and that's an intermediate situation. Continue to have commercial and industrial zoning centered around Kimballsville, which helps provide a base for the village. That's the PC, and that's a medium-term recommendation. And determine if there's higher density housing opportunities within and near the village, and that is zoning also the PC and a medium-term recommendation. Is there anything else under there that we should be changing? And if not, we will move to the future land use chapter. And let's look at the errata quickly. So the PC was going to discuss tiny homes at this meeting, but we'll get to that. There were no action items that were dramatically, changed based on the last meeting. So that means the action items we're going to review in terms of who's going to do them and when, direct growth to already developed areas, focused development, scale compatible, etc. The PC is going to do that with the help of the engineer and the manager, and that's an ongoing activity. Focus small scale business and mixed use in and around Kimballsville. The preference for local commercial. The PC was going to look at that with the help of the manager as secondary, and that was a medium-term activity. Focus industrial uses further out in the ring concept we talked about last time, and this is speaking at how to address the current SU district. That was the PC intermediate action. Consider low density zoning to help promote hobby farms. That was the PC because it's zoning again. Intermediate action in rural areas. Require the subdivision ordinance preserves large amounts of open space and ag lands through zoning measures. That's the PC to help the manager, and that's intermediate. Ensure the subdivision ordinance provisions, use site responsiveness. That's the PC, and that's ongoing. Determine if there's ways through ordinances or other strategies to reduce conflicts between ag uses and residential developments. That's the PC with the ag community, and that is something to look at in the near term and then ongoing. Reduce nonconformities in zoning. That's the PC, just as part of standard zoning update. That's ongoing. Look at land uses to ensure the MPC is met. That's the PC. With the solicitor, that's ongoing, and then make sure procedural aspects of zoning and subdivision remain up to date, and that's PC with the solicitor. Are there any changes that should be made to any of these at this point? And if not, I will move on to the next recommendation and set of actions. Revitalization. Create incentives in zoning for redevelopment existing sites. That would be the PC working with the Historical Commission. And to explore and then coordinate with the business community to develop a working group to focus on site redevelopment. The business community and the stakeholder interviews brought up this idea as a way to not have tear downs and open land development, but reuse what's already there. And that, of course, gets at the whole energy sustainability, energy conservation recommendations. Also, that's the manager with the business community, and that was looking to explore it. And then there was a feeling to try to help existing businesses. One of the ways to do that, particularly with everything happening with the pandemic, was making sure home occupations were allowed in kind of post-pandemic circumstances. Look at the zoning ordinance, and that was felt that that should be done sooner than later since this is already happening. And then review zoning as it relates to signage and other processes, and just looking at existing businesses and how to really promote existing businesses and helping them through zoning regulations. And that was the PC, and that was going to be ongoing. And then this section talks about housing. This is what Mark was talking about earlier. Variety of housing. That's the PC working with the solicitor. That's ongoing. Focus additional housing through mixed use in Kimballsville. That's the PC working with the HARB. Make sure it's compatible. Medium-term action. Focus any other multifamily housing near the current apartment complex, which is called the Wagner Apartment Heritage Village. That's PC. Intermediate action. Examine that accessory dwelling unit zoning regulations to ensure they provide for added variety of housing for aging in place specifically, and as a rural housing alternative. And that was the PC ongoing. And then how to incorporate tiny homes. And this comes to the comment that we have here in the errata sheet. How do you incorporate tiny homes into zoning a subdivision as an alternative, a more affordable way that matches the rural character? And that was PC, and that was something to explore. And that is page 12 of chapter 8. So looking at this, let's go to page 12. So that is this recommendation that the PC wanted to talk a little bit further about tonight. And the PC was going to look at the mobile home definition and then discuss it in relationship to tiny homes. I looked into this a little bit more, and I don't know if every municipality, but at least some of the ones I'm working with, since this recommendation was created, and I'm probably going to mess up the year. I think it's the 2019 building code was now adopted in Pennsylvania, and at least some of the municipalities I'm working with have adopted that. And the 2019 building code does now address tiny homes. The prior building code that was adopted in Pennsylvania, and I don't remember the year of it, apparently didn't address tiny homes. So this whole situation now, I don't know what's been adopted in Franklin. I'm talking about another community I'm working with.
So to clarify that, the IBC is a statewide adoption process, not local. So if it was adopted, there are a few, not many. I rarely ever find anybody that's adopted above and beyond the state because they have to do a very complicated application. We're currently under 2015.
Okay. This
So
community I'm working with has, I guess they've adopted the most recent one. Anyway,
the most recent is 2021.
they haven't adopted that one. I think they're a couple years behind. That's why I said
It
don't
would
quote
be
me here, but
2018 would be,
maybe
it's
it's
every 3
2018.
years, but
2018.
yeah, they would be that'd be unusual, because they're basically saying we don't want to be part of the state. We want to govern ourselves, which isn't really allowed. So I don't know. I looked it up and I couldn't, I looked it up. I looked up the first portion, the definition and all that. And I, once again, still found absolutely nothing that stated that anything smaller than a certain size was excluded from the International Residential Code. So I don't know I don't know who's saying it other than just saying it's in the building code. At the end of the day, they need to produce, in order for it to be a valid statement, you need to actually say, this is where it is in the building code. I hear things are in the building code every day of my life, and 9 times out of 10, they're not. So.
And you said when you looked it up most recently in 2015, it's in the building code or it's not in the building code? Tiny homes.
I actually looked it up in 2021.
Oh, okay, 2000.
Because I work in a weird place where we actually cross state lines, and so I have to abide by all 3 different codes. So
Okay.
I'm familiar with all of them. So I just happened to look it up in 21 instead of going back and seeing whether or not but in 21, it's still, there's nothing in there that says if your home is a certain size, then you don't have to follow the building code.
Can we take a more general approach? So the reason to put this in there, is it because of affordable housing? Asking anybody that was involved in the task force. If it is, then is there anywhere else that we already say we should be addressing all forms of affordable housing? Or if not, then change this, get rid of tiny homes and just say we should consider all forms of affordable housing.
Well, we do talk about a variety of housing types. This may be the only place we actually talk about the word more affordable housing type. The comp plan task force was very interested in tiny homes as another type of housing, and also as a type of housing that could serve potentially people who used to live in the township, younger people who used to live in the township who moved out of the township for whatever reason and would like to come back but can't afford to, or people who just want to downsize and want to stay in the township. To answer your question, those were the motivations, and it also provides, again, a more affordable starter type of home. Those were the motivations for even talking about it. And it came up in some of the public, the public comments. What are we going to do about tiny homes? Because they are a little bit different, than some of the other types of housing we have in the township now. So the policy thought was address it, at least to have some policy on the books about it. rather than not say anything about it.
Well, our ordinances don't preclude tiny homes. You've got to come in with a plan and get a building permit. And if it was a tiny home, I don't think there's any reason to preclude it from being approved and built. You've got to have a water system, a septic system. You got to have a certain separation. You know,
And to that point, John, the ADU would allow somebody to build a tiny home on an existing parcel that already has a residence if we're trying to keep kids with mom and dad, or we're trying to put mom and dad that are older than the kids with the kids.
Right.
The other thing that you can easily do if you want to build it, if you want to do a tiny home, it would be, yeah. Either way, it doesn't need to be an ADU, but manufactured homes do not fall under the purview of the building code. So therefore, anything that's manufactured follows a different set of codes, which tiny homes are part of manufactured housing.
so is there an issue? Because I mean, we would allow a trailer to be put on a property. You know, as long as it's the proper foundation and the proper septic and water systems, right? I mean, it happens.
Does it have to have a permanent foundation right now in the current, how your current ordinance is structured, or can it be on wheels still?
You know,
It can be on wheels.
yeah,
That's the whole, so you can have a mobile home on other lots. We have that section.
Okay, so what should we do with this action item? Do you want to just delete the whole action item?
I don't see a reason to have it myself, because I don't know that we don't preclude them. There's other ways of accomplishing it, you know, with the current ordinances. So why even get into it?
Do you want to keep, and this is just I'm throwing something out here. Do you want to take this bullet point and add it up here to the ADU section and then delete the rest of this?
I don't know, what does everybody else think? I mean,
Do we combine the two, the ADU and the tiny home, to be one bullet point to?
So I don't even, because are we talking, if it's a mobile home, it's a mobile home. It's either a large mobile home or a small mobile. I'm stuck on this tiny home thing because we have no definition for it. And we're saying it'll save a lot of money if it's called a tiny home, not a small mobile home.
why don't we just take it out?
That's what I've been arguing for. I just don't see a point in.
We don't limit the size of homes to a certain small size. The only thing we have is we have health issues related to the septic and the water systems, and that's controlled by the county.
I
So
think it's such a small issue. Let's take it out.
Yep, take it out.
I think so. We're not precluding it with our current ordinances. So I'm not
Correct.
sure what the issue is.
Okay, so 8, 4, 5. So, nope, no, this is pretty good. Is it all the way over here? There it is. Okay, so we are going to delete. We get rid of that. Okay, and then we have to go back to this business. And we are taking it out of there. Okay, I think I have one more thing. Oh, I have to update this, right? And that's page 12, right? Page 12. Thanks. Didn't want that to happen. Okay, page 12. Eight dash 4.5. Okay.
I'll save it.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so last but not least, I think we finished the table then. So last but not least, we have to circle back to this whole business in chapter 4, which was our,
Janine,
yes.
and sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I'm going to have to bail from the meeting. I'm actually falling asleep here. I was up extremely early.
Okay. Well, thank you for attending. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. The rest of you want to keep going though, right? Because the meeting said to 11 p.m.
Yeah, did you put 11 p.m.?
Yep, that's what the invite said that I got, 7 to 11 p.m.
I don't look at invites.
Right? I mean, we don't have the, come on, Gene, give us some hope. There's not that much left, is there?
Oh, it's just, well, what's left are your comments and John's comments.
Yeah, so are we ready to forge forward and tackle this issue tonight?
Do we have the awakeness to do this is the question.
So,
That's the question, yeah.
and even if we get to the end of this, we're not ready to say we're done, are we?
No, what it would allow Janine to do is have 2.5 weeks with the holiday in there, to really clean this all up for us. My thoughts are, somewhere I wrote down the dates. June 6th is our regular meeting. If we have a finished recommended comprehensive plan by June 6th.
June 2nd. Isn't it the first Thursday?
Yes, that's the planning commission meeting.
Is that what we're talking about? I'm sorry.
Where are you going? Where are you going, Dave? On the
Yeah,
6th?
we're gonna get 6th and 18th, Jeff. Those are dates. It was early enough in the meeting. I don't think I wrote down the wrong date.
The 6th and the 15th were the board meetings.
Yeah, June
Okay.
2nd is the planning commission.
So sorry, Janine, 4 shorter days, 4 days short, but even if that's the date plus plus 2 days, 45 days gives us adequate time for comments from the surrounding municipalities before the end of September. You know, June, let's even say June 15th, that's the end of July. So you're right, Chuck, that we're not going to finalize it tonight. But if we were able to get through this final discussion item of chapter 4, it would really give Janine 2 extra weeks to give us.
I'm good. Let's go.
So with that, thanks, Chuck. I would just ask everybody to take a look at your comments and understand that a plan is something going forward. And it is based upon history to some extent. And what we put in this is a plan. It's not a commitment. And so when we're wording this and understanding what emphasis we want to put on our viewpoints, just realize that there may be a middle ground to compromise on our narrative and our wording.
From my perspective, I've made the point that I thought I wanted to make, and from therefore, you can compromise any way you want to. I'm not hard up on any of this, okay? Okay? Does that make it easier?
No, I didn't mean to, like, my comment was not on any individual or anybody.
No, but I was just
Yeah.
commenting on mine because
Yeah,
the concern I have, I've pretty well explained a number of times. And if we're going to have history in there, it'd be nice to include the history of the vote that occurred in 2011. And other than that, I think the rest of it could be left out.
I can't, and I come from the other side. Excuse me. I want, excuse me. I want there to be a record that we are invested in open space and that some work has been done in that area. So the stuff that you see on the screen, it doesn't contradict what you're saying, John, and I'm fine however you want to deal with the vote. I'm not, that's not where I went to. I just want to just acknowledge to the people that read the document that there is money, tax money that's put aside for open space, and that we are using it to pay off a loan that won't be paid off till July 2040. So it's just a matter to acknowledge that there is a commitment on the part of the board to do, and it's been there for years to do this. And like I said, I don't really care about the going into who won what the vote was, but more in terms of factually, this is what happened.
I mean, that makes sense because the vote was a one-time thing, but the loan is still a thing.
Right, still happening today.
I know that wasn't eloquently put.
No, much better.
What I was trying to get at is you're still, you're still addressing the loan. The vote came and went, whatever, 10 years ago. So I think that's what you're trying to say.
Correct. And John and I actually talked about this before. I'm fine if that last sentence, the annual deficiency of that is made up by the general fund. I'm fine if that sentence goes away. I just think the fact is that there is an annual cost to that loan that which exceeds our dedicated tax receipts. And I would be fine to leave it there.
yeah, to share with everybody, I did, Melissa worked hard with Jeff to look to see about a reference about the cell tower revenues. And it, in 2006 or somewhere around there, it was for park and recreation or whatever. They couldn't find anything that said it was directed towards open space. And despite that, I don't think if you wanted to put in what our open space budget is, I don't think we have to say that there's money coming out of the general budget at the expense of something else.
Right, that's what
We know it's at the expense of something, but it's not necessarily what some have been trying to say it's at the expense of.
Yeah, I just want the message to be out there. We're committed to this, and we put our money where our mouth is by having this amount of money. You taxpayers have committed X amount of your tax money to this, and we put it to work. We have both some lands, and we're paying them all.
What is the dedicated tax receipts? I'm just curious.
You know, I don't know. I think we can find that out for you, Janine.
Okay, I was just curious because I was rereading the sentence, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's whatever that 0.5 mil, and I know it should go up every year, but so does the loan go up a little bit every year. It's not
Right, a little bit, I would think, with how many people live, how many people live in the township, et cetera. But yeah, I was just curious.
Well, Melissa, are you still on? Could you get that for Janine in the PC? Oh, if not, I'll make sure Jeff or I will get to Melissa. We'll get that. For you.
Yeah, Melissa's not on anymore.
Yeah, we lost. That's understandable.
So this wording right here is what we're talking about. I'm just highlighting it for everybody. Is this, as you can see, we started to add it in here.
Can you go back to the original document? Not with, so I can read the whole.
Without the changes?
Yeah, without Donna's or John's suggested.
Hold on 1 second. Well, if I just cut this. Okay, that was not helpful at all. I just want to be clear. That was not helpful.
If you highlight it, I think he just wants to read it without the highlighted section, so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get rid of it for a second.
Okay.
Track changes can get confusing. This I already made the change because I thought it was 2003 and it was 2002, but that was already something. So this is what it originally said before that change you just saw. It just said dedicated open space fund, period. We didn't get into any other, details. By we, I mean the comp plan task force.
So Donna and John, and the rest, so we're down to looking at how to word this paragraph, this first paragraph in open space and parklands. We're not looking at other changes.
That's all that I was thinking of, yes.
Okay,
The rest of it, I had no problem with. The only main thing I wanted to say is if we said in 2002, we had a referendum, if we're going to go through history, my view would be saying that in 2011, there was a referendum that said they didn't want to spend any more on open space.
right.
And that was all I really wanted to do to complete the history. After that, I don't really care. And I'm not really hung up on that. If the consensus is we leave it as it is, that's fine.
Janine,
John, I like the idea of adding that, that referendum in there. If it was voted for in, I don't know, I guess 9 years after the original referendum.
Well, I like the two, but again, I'm one person.
no, I agree with both of you, and I'm not trying to get rid of, if you're gonna state history, then you state in between the furthest back that you go and you bring the history current. And I'm just trying to think without getting everybody busy and asking Janine to flip back to John and Donna's comments, or suggested changes. I think it can be as simple as, the community interest has remained strong. Yet in a referendum, we weren't going to put more money up. And I know that's not how we word it, but
Right.
I think there's concern that is, depending on how we word this, it'll be looked like the community is not interested in preserving open space. And it's a matter of the definition of interest and support, depending on how you do that, leveraging, all these terms we've used in here throughout this comp plan. And if we go back to John or Donna's suggested inserts, maybe just tweaking a word or two to satisfy those that are concerned that adding the history, the most recent history in the referendum, which said we don't want to put more of our money in right now, but we're still interested in preserving open space.
I think that's why the comp plan task force, Dave, just left it as super generalized for the reason you just stated. It was like super generalized, or how do you explain it?
Well, right after open space fund, protection fund, what if we put the
Well, this is
community
the wording again.
by
Sorry.
establishing the fund's primary purpose? Okay, but where does John's come in?
We didn't get there yet. We were just starting on this one. I didn't even scroll down to the rest of it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're going to get this detailed, then
Okay, so would you have highlighted for Donna's to replace this whole first paragraph? Or
No, it just supplements it. It just supplements.
It's an addition.
It just supplements it. It doesn't replace it.
You keep what's there, and you would just add a sentence that says I don't, the payout, because it already talks about a loan, the payout date is July 2040. The annual cost exceeds what's there. And then you could add a sentence that says that in 2011, there was a vote and, residents were happy with the level of support or did not agree to increase that level of support. I mean, when I read this document, when I read it the first time, I just felt like it was very much, everybody wants open space. We need to spend every dollar we have on open space. And from working with you guys, I got the sense that that's not the case, that it is a more measured type approach to how we approach open space. And I just want to make sure that's captured in the document.
Okay, so the first thing we're gonna vote on is let's just keep it simple and just make them two separate but interrelated conversations. So the one is what I have highlighted here for Donna's stuff, and just determine what you all want to do with this information. And then we'll talk about John's stuff. So Donna's wording, do you want to add this wording as drafted that I've highlighted here?
And where would you add it? I think we need to see where it ultimately, how it fits in. So I think
Not all
that's,
here, some of it's here, but anyway, it would basically be, it's not all here, but you get the gist of it. That's what it used to look like.
And then you pick up the last two sentences.
Yeah, I have to still add the last sentence. I don't know why that got cut off, but anyway. Basically, that's what it would look like. By establishing real estate tax, yada, yada, yada. Basically what she wrote here.
And then you pick up the last two sentences.
Right.
I would just like to add that I actually agree with Donna that needs to be in there, because when I came on midstream, I didn't realize, everybody was not wanting to talk about open space. I didn't know this much had been done and that we were still paying that on it. So I think we need to make it extremely clear that that's what's going on. And if there's a decreased interest in it right now, there must be a way to segue into the fact that everybody's not completely doesn't want it. We've just put, and we should be proud of what we did. So I think, yeah, I hope there's a way we can word it.
Oh, there it is. Anyway, that's what it would look like. I just put this in yellow because that wasn't there before.
and then how does John's fit in?
Well, with this, it covers I just wanted people to know that we are paying this thing for a long time. And when I first read through this thing, I just thought everybody was gung ho for open space. We've changed some of the wording a bit. And by putting this in, I think this kind of moderates that view a bit.
So can we just leave it like this and call it an evening?
I don't have a real, the history would be nice to have, but I think this does it very nicely. I don't know. What do the other people feel?
I like it.
You want to go home, I know that.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I'm going to step out for a few minutes to get my dog inside. I will be back.
Well, how do you vote on this?
I'm fine with it. Either you guys are much more invested in it. I'm just trying to help. So whatever you two are, whatever everybody else wants, I'm fine.
Because if things work out, we may not be here when you come back, Chuck. So that would be a good thing.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Yeah, so I'm okay with Donna's addition. and just leave my stuff out. I mean, I don't need to have my thoughts in there because Don, I think, has incorporated some of the feeling anyways. All right?
Perfect.
I think your feeling is that, and I don't want to extend the meeting anymore, but we did have a referendum after this. And I mean, I don't think the community survey workshop says the interest in open space is still there,
Right.
but nobody wants to put money into it right now. It's not wrong for this township to be interested in open space and say, we're not willing to put more money into it right now.
Dave, I wouldn't even say we don't want to put more money into it. We don't want to,
And not that wordy, but
we don't want to increase
Leave it
taxes.
alone.
Yeah, there is money.
Right.
I would just leave it alone how it's worded.
Yeah, I mean, there is money, we continue to do it. And I think you actually capture a lot of that, Janine, as you go through the history. But we continue to use money from different sources especially with easements, because there's a way to.
all right, I just bring it up because I know your viewpoints and I don't disagree with them. I myself can know the history with or without it in the comprehensive plan. So I'm hearing we're going to go with Donna's wording. We go with it, John?
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
All right.
I wasn't kidding when I said that earlier.
Yeah. Matt, I think you're the only one left.
I'm okay. No, I'm okay with it.
Should we really try to finish up before Chuck gets back, or?
Yep.
That'd be great for him to come back to an empty screen.
Okay, then if this is the case, then are you all going to vote to pass this on tonight?
I think we have to wait for Chuck to come back. Do we have a quorum right now?
We do have three of us.
Okay.
Can we pass it on? You have, I know you've taken great detail with your errata sheet. You feel comfortable putting a draft together, Janine, that we can recommend it to the supervisors?
Yes.
Or, I mean,
Draft, does that mean then I would be back for the June 2nd meeting with that draft and you guys would be taking another look at it? Or how would that function in terms of, how the meeting would function?
so if we say you're able to put this all together by June 2nd, there's a clear 45-day clock that starts on June 2nd.
Right.
If we do it before then, I think it's kind of a quasi 45-day. I still think June 2nd gives plenty of time. It's.
Would you all be reviewing this again though, or you would just be basically saying this is it? I would be like opening
I
up.
really think we would be saying this is it.
It'd be nice to see it, but I would agree that we could say this is it.
I don't know how much more time I have to go through the whole document again.
Yeah, I know. I would just look this up.
45 days from June 2nd would be July 17th.
Is that good?
So that gives us 45, 30, 75 days for the supervisors to say yay or nay.
Right. That gives over 45 days for them to say yay or nay. So that would give them at least 2 meetings. That would give them the June meeting and the July meeting.
John and Matt, I think we say, let Janine clean this all up and present the clean draft on June 2nd, and we plan on recommending it to the supervisors.
I agree with that.
I agree.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So I will be back on June 2nd.
Great.
You'll see me another time.
Any other agenda items? I don't think so. Any other public comment? Great. We'll adjourn 10:43. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, all.
Thank
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you,
See you in a
Janine.
second.